Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday, April 15, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Thanks for being here, and for those of us, or those of you joining us remotely, appreciate that. We'll go ahead and get started tonight by reading the roll, please, Tom.
Councilmember Selberg.
Here.
Sale.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Staley. Here. Brecky.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Kylie. Kylie.
Nice touch.
Kylie. Neitzer.
Rick.
Here.
Kylie.
Has joined the conference.
All right. We got them all here. Bear with us tonight on this, this deal. That's all 8 of them. We will ask Tom Rooney. Tom, are you with us on the line as well? Tom Rooney with Direct Line Prayer Center. Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
All right. We're going to, I'm going to ask that you rise. Tom's going to give our invocation via the phone, and then we'll stay standing for our Pledge of Allegiance to follow right after. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. God bless you all. Father, in Jesus' name, we come to you, and we thank you, Lord, for your great faithfulness to us. Your word tells us that great is the nation and blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. Father, we also turn to you for wisdom, for your word also instructs us that if any of us were to lack wisdom, that we should seek and we would find, that even as we knock, the door will be open, and as we ask, we will receive. So, Father, we're asking you for that kind of wisdom tonight during this time of this pandemic. Lord, we pray that you would impart your wisdom to the mayor, to the council members, to all of our leaders, both local, state, and national. We trust you, Father, to bring order to the situation. And Lord, we thank you and praise you that nothing is too difficult for you, that we can turn to you, God, and receive relief. So we're asking you, Lord, for a reversal of the rates of infection and of deaths. And God, we pray in Jesus' name that you would impart your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to each one. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Tom. We will move on to item 4, which is our consent agenda. Look for any changes or motions there.
Move to approve, Erickson.
Okay, we have a second.
Second, Neitzer.
Move to approve by Erickson, seconded by Neitzer. Any discussion, council? All right, we'll take a vote on that, please.
Councilmember Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley. Brecky.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Neitzer.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We'll move on to item 13, which is our regular agenda. Look for a motion to approve that.
Move to approve, Erickson.
Move to approve.
All right, seconded by Kylie, motion by Erickson on that. Any discussion, council? All right, we'll take a vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley. Brecky.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Neitzer.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We're at the general public input portion of our agenda tonight. As a reminder, input during this portion will last no more than 3 minutes per person, and in total last no more than 30 minutes. During general public input, the public is welcome to speak on any topic that does not appear later on in the agenda. For regular agenda items following general public input, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input is limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration only. Just a reminder, I know a lot of you are here to talk about our COVID responses, transit and stay at home. Now would not be the time to do that, be when we address that later on in the agenda. So this is just for general comments and conversation and input. So at this time, I'd like to invite anyone forward for that. And clerk, please note our time is 7:05. Good evening.
Bruce Danielson. I've been filing what are called 321 notices to the city, notice of claim, for a very important reason. It's because we're finding things that the city is doing wrong, and you have to put the city on notice for each one of these incidents that happen. I was told after last Tuesday's meeting that our public inputs, and especially my inputs, are irrelevant, so several in front of me are tuning us out. Last week, the City Council had an illegal executive session discussing the COVID-19 coronavirus and other issues, including video lottery ramifications because of it. Now, how do I know this? No one on the dais had to tell me. There were witnesses to the Zoom meeting audio being tuned up for us to hear. We know counselors were warned it was an improper meeting and should be stopped. I filed an SDCL 321 notice of claim to preserve all notes, recordings, and agendas for a likely open meetings violation that will be filed. Last week I had a public input here and I talked about democracy dying in darkness. And it's real interesting that I only have a couple people sitting in the dais in front of me that is even paying attention to what I'm saying. They're doing their best to watch everybody else walk in and out. And I'm telling this to the people at home because those sitting at the dais are totally ignoring everything that I'm saying. Right here on the overhead is an area that's boxed in. And there are only 4 things that a city council or a public body in South Dakota can discuss in an executive session. And nothing that was in that executive session last week that was called by the city attorney, I happen to know that because the city attorney even said that he called the meeting, that he's saying that everything that is said to the city council in any way, shape, or form, or any city council member, is attorney-client privilege. And that is absolutely incorrect. And I want everybody in the city of Sioux Falls to know that this is important because democracy dies in darkness, and this room is becoming a very dark place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Good evening.
Hey, good evening. Will Anderson, Sioux Falls Tenants Rights Union. I want to thank you all again for your diligence and your leadership at this time. I know all of you are working immeasurably hard to deal with this ever-changing crisis. As the mayor said Tuesday morning, this is a tense time, but as he went on to say, the silver lining to working through such a time is seeing different angles to these problems and finding different solutions. He also mentioned being able to pivot and change course and reminded us that the 8 of you are the wheels that move this city forward. So with that in mind, I'm going to once again ask you to consider using your power to enact a 90-day moratorium on evictions for non-payment in Sioux Falls. We have petitioned the governor and she has said no. The Multi-Housing Association asked the governor not to issue such a moratorium, instead asking her to defer property taxes in the hope that landlords will grant some leniency to tenants. There are tens of thousands of working families in our city that simply cannot depend on the potential goodwill of their landlord. They need something concrete in place. The Multi-Housing Association also said that some landlords have half of their tenants who cannot make May rent. The crunch is coming, and we need you to act now. You've told me you do not have the authority to issue such a moratorium, but I am asking you to re-examine that opinion, look again at the law, and act in light of the governor's inaction. In addition to being the sole licensor of rental units, you issue licenses for auctioneers, bowling alleys, contractors, circuses, theaters, massages, electricians, fortune tellers, taxi cabs, plumbers, and food trucks. Every one of those licensees must operate within guidelines that you set and you enforce. You decide their hours of operation, where they may operate, and in some instances, who may operate or partake. You deem it your authority to act and regulate the activities of every type of license you issue. So why should a rental license be any different? The state does not issue rental licenses in the city of Sioux Falls. You do. Nothing in the charter prohibits you, and state law only requires that home rule ordinances be as strict or more than state law. There is nothing that forbids you from pressing the pause button here to help working families. Lastly, I want to discuss public health. The charter says that our rental licensing is to, quote, protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city. How can you consider a shelter-in-place order while we have tens of thousands unsure of their housing status? Where will they go once evicted? To family, to friends, to the already overcrowded and infected shelters, or to the jail? It flies in the face of the social distancing standards you are recommending not to issue a moratorium. Tenants will still be liable for their payment of rent. That's not what we're asking. Don't misconstrue that. But a moratorium gives them time. Time to get their finances in order, time for unemployment or stimulus checks to arrive, time to find new work, time to make arrangements with their landlord. We are asking you for time. You have the power to act. Please do. Local control.
All right, thank you, Will. Thank you. Good evening.
Tim Stanga, this isn't nothing that just came up. There's a lot of people, even before this pandemic, that couldn't make their rent payments. I've been bringing it up for the last 10 years about my neighbors. They live paycheck to paycheck. When it comes to the third to fourth week, they have absolutely not one dime left out of their Social Security to be able to, one, get ahead. They just get further behind. They can't buy their medications. Why is that? Because the rent's too high and they don't have enough money to come through. This isn't something new. People are going to be short all the time. My mom and dad always told me that if you're going to be able to live, make sure you have a little pot of gold to work off from. And I do believe that they taught me the right thing, to make sure I have money for a bad time. Now, if you're going to go after the landlords, you got to go after the person that maybe might be spending the money on a new cell phone or internet or elaborate TVs or brand new cars. Because, you know, rent comes first, shouldn't come last.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening for general public input? Good evening.
Good evening. Rick Altoff at 2600 East 33rd. First of all, I'd like to commend you all, and I'm proud and to be pleased and have a great amount of gratitude being a citizen of this community. The energy and effort that you're putting into this is significant, and we certainly applaud that. I have two concerns to bring up. One is there was no place on the internet, the agenda and so on, that described what this ordinance would be, the stay-at-home ordinance. And it should have the language there so the public can be informed and have a very strong democratic participation and civic participation in that regard. The second thing is that I would strongly encourage you to look at modifying the overall aspect of shutting all the parks down, except for the bicycle trail. The parks are very vital for the emotional, spiritual, physical purposes of getting people out, encouraging them to become part of nature and being connected to each other, from the standpoint of recognizing who they are and having that freedom of what God has provided us as a universe. So I strongly encourage you to look at the modification of that restriction in the parks and let people enjoy it with the guidelines that are established as far as distance, social distancing. That can be understood, and as you have shared on numerous of your visual teleconferences or whatever you want to call them, it's an educational process. And if we can educate the public accordingly, it will be well respected. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
And good luck on all the challenges.
Thank you. All right, and just a reminder, those items are later on in the agenda, so we'll keep things to items not appearing on later in the agenda.
Hi, Stephen Ciano. Want to get to the source of your authority. If we look on the federal stage, with the founding of our country, there was two groups, two factions, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists wrote the founding document, which gave absolute sovereignty to the states. And the Federalists instituted, under the guise of making the Confederation stronger through some means, they instituted a coup d'etat, arguably, with the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists responded with the Bill of Rights. Starts with our freedoms to speak, to be heard, to worship or not worship as we please, and we can't be intruded upon, and ended with the number 10 was anything not specifically enumerated was to be reserved to the states. States had a lot of power under that. And a lot of people I hear referring to federalism and states' rights as if they are synonymous are absolutely wrong, as I see it. As I read history, and I have read history, I've read about the social and political philosophies that and principles of natural law upon which our nation was founded. And you people up there, if you do not represent us, then you are working against us. And I've said this before, this is what a favorite of mine, Jesus, rabbi, philosopher, anti-religionist, Jesus, in the Bible is depicted as saying, you can't serve two masters, and each and every one of us is a brother and sister. Now, I want to jump to, we have our sovereignty in our nation, which has been violated. You look at the BP disaster in the Gulf. That was a British company. What's it doing right off the coast of Florida? You look at the Keystone Pipeline. What's it doing crossing borders? I think it's a Canadian company. What's it doing crossing into South Dakota? Why aren't people defending against it? This is a violation. You look at all the people coming across the border from Mexico. How many are bringing in disease? I don't know. That's one of the considerations. I also want to say again about the old and disabled people need help that they're not getting now.
Thank you, Stephen.
And it's disgusting to see food given to people with good cars. Free food.
Thank you. All right, anyone else for general public input tonight? Good evening.
Good evening, sir, City Council. I want to thank you for your leadership in our community. I arrived to city in Sioux Falls in '77. I never seen our city in the situation we are in right now. It's a very tough time. But my problem is, and I hope you as a city council and you, Mr. Mayor, all be in one page and one word, how we guiding our city. Not every person go to the different direction at some point. I hate this. This has been more fearful to our community because everybody's sitting at home on the computer or telephone talking about more negativity, what's going on in our city, instead of bringing some positivity and act as a human being, how we make this community better and how we overcome these challenges we have. My advice to the City Council and you, Mr. Mayor, all of you have to have one news conference together to advise people in this city. We have a challenge, we work together, and we overcome this challenge with God's help. I believe scary people create more problem economically and health-wise and mentally and physically to our community. I, as a proud Muslim, believe if this virus is going to kill me, I will welcome it. But I'm not going to put every word every single day in my telephone and scaring the community. And another thing is really concerning me, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I think this is a bigger city in Sioux Falls. Politically, I think we're using it against our leadership in the state level. And I want you guys to be aware of it to make sure we are on the same page with our governor, because some people behind the scene might support to shut down this city because our government say no to that. So I don't want city council and our mayor and our community in Sioux Falls used for political game against the highest level and our biggest city in city of Sioux Falls. So I encourage you, you all together, stand up together with mayor and have a news conference to bring positive issue to our community, a certain negativity, and people keep saying, mayor is going one direction, our governor going one direction, the city council is going to one direction, some business people is going some direction. We have to unite ourselves together to make this community better. This is a tough time. But more than long as we not be in the same page, we making it hardest, and the city is already suffering economically and health-wise. Every single person we use is important to our community.
Appreciate
it.
So
I encourage you to do that, all of you.
Thank you, Kadir.
Thank you.
Anyone else for general public input tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our next item. Tom?
Item 15, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, repealing subchapter Disability Awareness Commission and subchapter ADA Accessibility Review Board, and adding a new subchapter Disability Awareness and Accessibility Review Board to Chapter 98, Human Relations of the Code of Ordinances of said city.
Stacy, you want to have the floor on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That's this ordinance is second reading, as was explained at the first reading, is combining those two boards, both in the interest of obtaining a quorum, but also in the interest of efficiency, in that a lot of the duties were somewhat duplicative. And so the ordinance has just been redrafted to allow them to combine all of those efforts into one board.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item tonight?
Stephen Ciano, you're talking about disability awareness or something like that? Well, I wish that you people would, as I've spoken about before, actually defend disabled people. Stand up for us. Thank you.
All right, anyone else care to speak on this tonight? Counselors, do you have any questions for Stacy on this one?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Neitzer.
All right, motion approved by Erickson, seconded by Counselor Neitzer. Any discussion, council? All right, seeing none, we'll call for a vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We'll move to item 16, please.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, repealing subchapter Affordable Housing Advisory Board of Chapter 32, City Organizations of the Code of Ordinances of said city.
Hey, Jeff.
Good evening, Mayor. Jeff Eckhoff, Planning and Development Services. This is the second reading to combine the Affordable Housing Board with the city and the Homeless Advisory Board of the county into the new Accessible Housing Advisory Board.
All right, anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Counselors, do you have any questions for Jeff? He's trying to sneak out, so I'm not seeing any. I got a motion to approve it.
Move to approve.
All right, do I got a second for that?
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion approved by Selberg, seconded by Counselor Kylie. Any discussion, council, on this? All right, we'll take a vote on it, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale? Sale? Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. We'll move on to item 17.
Item 17, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 30.
Has joined the conference.
City Council, Subchapter Presiding Officer, Duties. Recommendation is to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020.
All right, I believe Counselor Kiley, are you going to address this item, sir?
Yes, I will, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. On the screen, or soon to be on the screen, is a draft copy of proposed changes to our ordinance dealing with city council leadership elections. Due to the fact the municipal election has been delayed, it was supposed to have been held yesterday. It is necessary to change the ordinance so we may delay the election of our leadership. If left unattended, we'd be required to elect new leadership, that is city council leadership, on May 19th. The changes and additional language are highlighted on the copy you see on the screen. The proposed changes deal with an issue caused by the delay of the April municipal and school district elections. As I stated previously, the delay negatively impacts the city council leadership elections. The proposed fix you see before you not only addresses the issue as it relates to the current COVID-19 pandemic, but it also covers anything that may cause delays to future municipal elections. So basically, the changes are in section 1B, and about halfway down section 1B, it states the regular election of the city council chair and vice chair shall each year on the third Tuesday in May, and this is where the majority of the change is, or at the city council meeting that follows the installation ceremony, whichever is later. For the purposes of this section, an installation ceremony is defined as the swearing in of newly elected officials that follows a regular election. So that's basically the changes that we have made. The date of the installation ceremony will be determined as soon as we have determined the date of our election, which we think may be June 2nd, but that's still subject to verification by both counties involved as well as the Sioux Falls School District. The second reading on this is scheduled for April 21st. We actually had an informational little over a week ago on this topic, so this is the second time, but it's classified as the first reading. Second reading next week. Provided the proposed changes pass, the new ordinance will be in place prior to the delayed election. I'll answer any questions following public input.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item tonight? All right, seeing none. Counselors, you have any questions for your colleague? Actually, we'll just go right to a motion, then we'll move into that. So can I get a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Move to approve, Kiley.
Second, Erickson.
All right, motion for that by Kiley, seconded by Erickson. Now we'll move into any discussion. Council, questions for Counselor Kiley on this? All right, seeing none, we're going to take...
Mayor?
Go ahead, Counselor
Chairman,
Brecky.
Mayor. Just one question, Counselor Kiley. Will this need to be re-altered afterwards, or is this designed so that it will just it will be effective in the future as well, just because of the neutral way you stated it?
You're correct. This will be in effect going forward. There will not be a need to make any changes following the election.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
All right,
You bet. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion, Council? All right, seeing none, we'll take a vote on this, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Heitzert?
Yes.
All right, we got them, 8-0. Move on to item 18.
Item 18. First reading an ordinance to the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, setting the postponed joint City of Sioux Falls School District election date for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020, and authorizing a joint election with Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020.
Tom, floor is yours on this one, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is a follow-up, again, as Councilor Kiley mentioned. They talked about that item that he briefed at an informational. We discussed this too at an informational. So obviously, the April 14th election is postponed. The recommendation within this ordinance is to reschedule our election to June 2nd, and I'll explain what that looks like here in a moment. So basically what we would do is conduct a joint election with each of the counties, their primaries, Lincoln and Minnehaha. So the intent is to also conduct the municipal election on June 2nd just as well. In order to do this, there's some key provisions within the ordinance. Number one, we do require separate agreements, which I'll discuss on the next page and answer some questions that you had from the last meeting. I do want to point out right now that Lincoln County has already approved the agreement. Minnehaha will not consider theirs till April 28th due to timing, but I'll discuss that a little more in a moment. But the other key portion in the ordinance is that we set the start of terms to the third Tuesday in June, which is June 16th in this case. That's to allow us to do an official canvass the week after the election, which we typically do. And then the next week we would have the installation of members. So the agreements, a couple questions that were asked last time was basically a cost breakdown, and I'll address that up here, but also the reimbursement from the Sioux Falls School District. Now, we don't require an updated agreement with the Sioux Falls School District. They do understand that we're seeking to make this change to June 2nd and are okay with it. So I'll talk about our relationship with the two counties. The counties, according to the agreement, would provide for poll workers and polling places, and all of these things that I'm mentioning, I do want to underscore that my office will continue to assist both counties to make this happen, but they've been given the responsibility by these agreements basically for control of workers and polling places. So the city would pay 25% of the cost of the workers. That would come out in total to about $16,000, about $13,000 toward Minnehaha and $3,000 to Lincoln County, and then 50% of the cost of the polling places. We have habitually, for years, provided a modest stipend to the non-public polling places of about $100. The counties do too, and we would cover half of that cost, and that comes out to about $2,000. The majority of it, about 3/4, would be given to Minnehaha, and the remainder to Lincoln County. We will continue absentee voting. As a matter of fact, we're doing it right now. I do just want to put a plug in and hope people saw the news release from the Secretary of State's office that they're sending absentee ballot applications by mail to all registered voters. So that's a great thing. I encourage folks to look out for it in the mail. We do also have in-person voting going on as well at 220 West 6th Street. We'll also continue payment to Minnehaha County for assistance on election night. They assist us with the tabulation process. In the past, I do want to kind of get it out there right now. In the past, using those 3 machines, the tabulators, has been great. We got the election counted both times for the runoff and the regular in 2018 very quickly. What I do want folks to just start preparing themselves for now, and we'll come up with a plan, is that we're going to have to do primary ballots and city election ballots on the same night. So we'll present a plan on how we're going to do that, because it obviously will take a little longer. And then conduct of the election, we'll use our existing ballots. That is permissible under the law. We expect to spend about $22,000 on ballots and programming. And then we'll continue to maintain at each one of the polling places separate registration lists, separate poll lists, and ballot boxes. I've had a lot of discussions with the Minnehaha County Auditor already. I'm going to start discussions with the Lincoln County Auditor, but we've discussed it all in concept amongst the 3 of us, and I think we'll have a great plan going forward. So that should outline some of the costs. We do have some additional costs that we've incurred because of this. For example, had to go out and buy additional ballot boxes because we've used the ballot boxes from the county. That was about $8,500, and they came in yesterday. So there are costs like that that we'll incur. We'll also plan on sending out a postcard. That'll be about $40,000. But our reimbursement from the school district is $39,562. That's the cost of their last comparable election. That price includes a good portion of their programming because they do vote centers and use the electronic poll books. So with that, I will take any questions that you may have.
All right, thanks, Tom. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this topic tonight?
Bruce Danielson. I just had a quick question for Tom, if he could answer it. Is the April 14 election that was supposed to be held yesterday, several nonprofits that are in town host the polling in their locations, and now they're going to be out of that rent. And I was wondering if they were going to still be paid for the use of the buildings, or if there was some kind of arrangement that had been made with them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else care to speak on this topic tonight? All right, councilors, we'll move into any questions that you may have for Tom. Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, thanks for all your work on this. I know the last few weeks have been just pretty much a whirlwind like with everywhere else. How has you brought up absentee voting, has the pace on that picked up any?
The pace has begun to pick up, not necessarily in-person absentee. I couldn't give you an exact number as of today, although I did get an update. But last week I reported that we had about close to 1,100 applications that have been received. We're sending ballots out. We've gotten a good portion of those back. And we're just starting to see an uptick in the amount of absentee ballot applications that are coming in. We're still averaging or looking at, say, 4 to 8 people per day in person. But again, I think that mail-in option is great, and we've answered a lot of phone calls about it over the past couple of weeks, and I think we're seeing a response to it.
Good. Yeah, I think I do what you just did as well, and encourage folks at home to, I hope they'll look into absentee voting while they've got some time on their hands here over the next few weeks, and hope to see that really pick up the pace. So thank you.
And I will, if I can, I'll address Mr. Danielson's question. No, the polling locations knew several weeks ago, even before the delay of the election, that they, if we don't have the election, then they wouldn't get their $100 stipend. And they, most of them are still on board for the June 2nd election as of now, which is a good thing.
Other questions for Tom? Any questions? Mr. Mayor. I'll go with Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Greco, talk a little bit about the line of succession if people become ill as part of the election process. I know you're our chief election official with Auditor Litz, and I mean, where does that go if you're out for 3 weeks?
Well, I've got a great staff, Denise and Tamara. They could jump in. I've been working hand in hand with our City Attorney Koistra for a long time now. I think you'd probably lean on him quite a bit like I already do. But I'm just practicing all those safe measures and trying to keep myself healthy.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Steele, did you have a question?
I have a few questions, thank you.
Okay.
Tom, how much, you just referenced it when you were talking about the nonprofits and the rent, that they had a heads up several weeks before yesterday. So my question, and being intimately involved with this election, is at what point would we be saying the June 2nd election isn't going to happen? I mean, how much lead time do you need to pull the plug on all that?
Well, I think it would be, it would be up to the legislature or some other act. I don't think it would be an act by us, presumably. But, just looking at other states across the country, I think, it can be postponed up until the day prior.
And just for the public, since we're talking about elections, what are going to be the rationale for not having the election? I mean, who's going to be, what would be the parameters, and then who's going to make that decision? Is that going to be in the hands of the legislature?
Well,
is there any local control that is going to say, well, we can't have, just like last time a few weeks ago, you made the decision that you were not going to be able to staff these places?
Well, I think just as a matter of course, and my job as part of your staff is to apprise you of any issues that we may have, being able to pull something like that off. And again, presumably, I think a decision like that would be made at the state level.
At the state, okay. Because we'll have to be, as we get into May then, I mean, you're probably going to need 2 weeks to, I mean, if 2 weeks out, we think we're still in the midst of this, then you have to start taking some action, right? Would you say?
Well, we'll have to keep, just like we did for the lead up to this election, we kept on working until the very last moment to try and make it happen.
And in the lead up to it, I sent 2 emails to the governor the week before this saying, please help us because this looks like it's going to fall apart. So there might be a time when we need to have some, if it doesn't look like we're getting a better situation with this COVID in our community.
Yeah, and that's why I would encourage people right now to continue taking advantage of that absentee by mail option. When they get that application, fill it out and send it in.
And now, that's the next question I have. I had a conversation with Bob Litz on Saturday, and I will tell you, there seems to be a lot of confusion with people as to what they're actually sending for. Some people have reached out to me and said, Teresa, can you mail me an absentee ballot? Well, no, that's not how it works. You have to do what you call it, a registration?
It's an application.
And the application. Now, Bob Litz told me on Saturday that apparently you can take a picture of your driver's license with your phone and you can email that to him.
Yeah, and that's great news. That was some guidance that recently came out. We have it on our webpage now. We've been telling folks when they call the office as well. As long as you send that original application into your auditor signed, and if you can't get a notary or you don't have, or you can't make a photocopy of a license of a photo ID, you can email that picture, a picture of it to your applicable auditor, and they'll marry the two up.
So the question I had about the logistics of that is that you have to physically mail the form in, but then you're going to be emailing the photo in. So the two are not going in at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Litz said you email the photo to him. Are you putting that on the information?
Your absentee ballot application must go to your auditor, and there's contact information for each of the auditors.
I understand, but is it going to say on that what to do if you're going to use your phone to take the photo?
You would have to send it to auditor@minnehahacounty.org or.
And thank you. And this is where I think people are getting confused. And plus, we got the notary, so you can get it notarized. You can make a copy of your driver's license at your house, or now you can add this phone element, but that, again, is going to have to be sent as an email, and this is going to be mailed. So somehow we got to make sure that the two of them arrive at the same time. So that's going to, but I think we need to put that on that postcard, which, by the way, we are sending a postcard out to our residents, letting them know the logistics of the actual election when we know that's going to happen. So as it stands now, election's June 2nd, when would the postcard be mailed with the information of where your polling place will be?
Once we finalize the ordinance and, anticipate the last week of April, we could send something out.
So we're, okay, and then,
First week of May.
and then would you go back?
However, I will say that we've had most success sending postcards out closer to the election than further out, but in this case, I do think we need to get it out sooner rather than later.
And then the last thing is you had mentioned the Minnehaha County Commission is going to be meeting after we pass the second reading on this.
Right.
And people have asked me, are both counties coming along for this? So you were going to tell us about that.
It's coming along great, and just given the timing, it's the agreement that they're going to consider on April 28th. So the Lincoln County has already agreed to the agreement. You'll see that next week on contracts and agreements. So they have signed it, and then we'll do our ordinance next week as well. It just so happens that Minnehaha is not going to get to their agreement until the 28th, which is okay because we still will have set the date. And on the 28th, they'll sign the agreement and essentially approve a joint election.
And then so people right now are getting these ballots to vote, and then is it the 17th of this Friday? Then you can start getting another ballot for the legislature.
Primary absentee voting does start this Friday.
Right. So okay.
Then I would direct questions to the auditors about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions for Tom from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Kiley.
Quick question for Tom. Tom, just want to confirm, did you say the installation of elected council members providing the election takes place on the 2nd of June, installation would be June 16th?
Right, it would be the third Tuesday, because we are still required to do a canvass of official votes after the election, and that would presumably be the second Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you very much. So based on the previous item that I presented, that would be the evening or the afternoon when we would be electing our council leadership, providing the election is scheduled for the 2nd of June. Thank you.
All right, you bet. Any other questions for Tom, council?
Move approval.
Second Erickson.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Erickson to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21 on this one. Any other discussion? All right, let's take a vote on it, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
That passes 8-0. On item 19, please.
Item 19, a resolution vacating the East 16th Street public right-of-way bounded by South 9th Avenue and Lot 1, House 4th Addition to the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, as shown on Exhibit A.
Good evening, Kurt.
Good evening. Item 19 is East 16th Street right-of-way near 16th and Cliff. Willis and Lund, on behalf of the owner, submitted the right-of-way vacation per South Dakota law and the city's street vacation policy. Neighborhood meeting was not required. This is just a small remnant of a 1970s right-of-way vacation. If the vacation is approved, a 10-foot utility easement will be reserved for the public and private utilities, and engineering does not have any concerns with this right-of-way vacation.
All right, thanks, Kurt. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this one tonight? Councilors, you got any questions for Kurt on this item?
Move approval.
Second Erickson.
All right, motion approved by Selberg, seconded by Erickson. Any discussion, council? All right, we'll take a vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr? Yes. Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
All right, that item passes 8-0. Item 20.
Item 20, a resolution vacating a portion of the 66-foot wide section line right-of-way lying adjacent and south of the Interstate 229 northbound off-ramp right-of-way at the Benson Road interchange as shown on Exhibit A. The recommendation is to set a date of hearing for Tuesday, May 12, 2020.
This section line right-of-way is in the Wexford Addition, which is just south and east of the I-229 and Benson Road interchange. Sayer Associates, on behalf of the owner, submitted the right-of-way vacation pursuant to South Dakota law and it complies with the street vacation policy. The north limit of the right-of-way vacation does terminate at the DOT's right-of-way for 229, and we're working with them to ensure the future interchange needs are met. Neighborhood meeting was not required. This is essentially just pasture land at the moment and not being utilized or improved. And engineering does not have any concerns with the right-of-way vacation.
All right, thanks, Kurt. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this topic? Councilors, you got any questions for Kurt on that one?
Move approval.
Second Erickson.
All right, motion approved by Selberg, seconded by Erickson. Any discussion, council? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr? Yes. Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Next item, item 21, notice of transfer of appropriations on the memorandum dated April 3rd, 2020.
All right, and on to our new business.
Item number 22, this is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, establishing a stay-at-home order for the City of Sioux Falls for containment of the COVID-19 pandemic. The recommendation is to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020.
All right, good evening, Jill. I'm planning to speak as well. How should we do this? Should I pass the gavel first, set this up, and then turn it over to you? That'd be all right? Okay. So how this works in the dais is I'm passing the gavel to Marshall. Marshall will chair this item just because I want to be able to speak to it and answer questions that the council may have as well. So a little bit of background on the situation we find ourselves as a city that's not unique to a lot of cities across the country right now. What is unique about Sioux Falls is the growth rate that we're seeing in our COVID cases right now, and obviously you all know that. It's been highlighted all across the country in terms of how rapidly we're seeing growth in our counties. Today, our Minnehaha and Lincoln County account for about 1,000 cases with just over 200 recoveries of COVID. That puts us, we're about in the top 20 per capita in MSAs in the country for COVID cases per capita. And if you would have told me we would be in that position 10 days ago, I would have said no way. And we find ourselves today in a very challenging spot, in a very challenging position. Today to date we've done a lot of things to help flatten the curve, and you're sick of hearing that term, but we started small. We started with messaging, then we did an ordinance where we limited patrons in businesses to 10 or fewer. We didn't shut down businesses. We've never shut down businesses in the city as part of our response. We've closed our park system. We continue to preach gatherings of 10 or fewer in social settings. I did a proclamation, a mayoral proclamation, which many of you know there's no legal authority to that. There's no teeth to that. But it was a chance to just continue to message the importance of this issue, the importance of social distancing. The governor's office also has put a couple executive orders in place for our county specifically, one of which is a stay-at-home order for those 66 and over, and those with underlying chronic health conditions. As the statistics show, those populations are most at risk for severe complications from COVID. And so we've taken a lot of steps in our response in the city of Sioux Falls, and I'm very proud of the residents, how seriously the majority of our residents have taken that. What sometimes continues to get lost in this process is the fact that we're not stopping the spread of COVID. There's really not a lot we can do to stop the spread of COVID. We're trying to slow down the spread of COVID. We're trying to slow down the rate at which we get it in our counties to lessen the strain on our healthcare systems, to lessen the strain on the city and all the resources that will be needed to take care of patients who will ultimately become COVID positive. Today we had a meeting with our state partners and both healthcare partners. I think they're here. They're probably in the overflow room. I saw them earlier. And from that data, they projected that we are looking at a peak in Sioux Falls earlier than the state in this, which in some ways can be considered a little bit of a blessing in that we're going to peak here, hopefully get some people on the path to wellness, and then we'll start to see a peak in the state a little later on. And so that's looking like mid-May is the current projection. So as we sit here mid-April, I'm here to tell you the worst is yet to come in our city, and you need to be prepared for that. We're not out of the woods. We're in the first inning of the ball game here. That projection has put us at the need for around 1,200 to 1,300 beds for the COVID response, hospital beds. Based on what we know, that will put us very close to or right at the ceiling of the capacity of our two large healthcare systems here in Sioux Falls. It's also recommending or suggesting, based on the modeling, around a 6 to 8% hospitalization rate. Our hospitalization rate has been fairly low thus far. That's a positive. Okay, so there are silver linings within this. Hospitalization rate has been low. We have avoided a lot of fatalities to date. They're happening. I heard of another one today, but we have been fortunate on that front as well. Statistically, there are data from across the country, data sets that reinforce different social distancing strategies and the effect they have on hospitalization rates. There's really a 25% model, a 35% model, and a 50% model. I'm sorry to unpack all this, but this is important to know why we landed where we're landing tonight. Doing what we've done to date with strong messaging, mayoral proclamations, some of the limitations we put on 10 or fewer patrons in business and so forth, the modeling says that will have a 25% impact on our peak numbers and our peak hospitalization rate in flattening that. Taking it another step to a stay-at-home order has the potential to have a 35 to maybe 40% decrease in that hospitalization rate. And then you have what we call a shelter in place, and we've used that term to date. This is called a stay-at-home, what we're proposing tonight. Shelter in place would really be what I would say you can do in China or North Korea, and that is you're not leaving your house, and if you do, you're going to get arrested by the government, and that would show about a 50% rate in the curve, in flattening that curve. What we're bringing forward tonight is a stay-at-home order, and Jill's going to go through the details of that, and I'm not going to spend time getting into the details of that because she'll do that. It's a sad day when the mayor has to bring something like this forward, okay? When the mayor has to make a decision between business, the economy, liberty, the Constitution, and public health, and pick which one is most important, because they're all important. I am a small business owner, so people who say you have no idea what businesses are going through, I know exactly what a business is going through in this. My level of empathy is through the moon with businesses right now. My level of empathy is also there for those who are being impacted by this and who are at-risk conditions and what that curve will look like in mid-May. And anything that I can do as someone that was elected to lead this city and protect the health of our patrons and our citizens is a role I take very, very seriously. And I do not want to, in 5 years, look back and say I didn't do enough. I didn't try hard enough. And that's why we're bringing this forward tonight. I was talking to my dad on the way over here. I'm not too old to get advice from the old man, and he's in Arizona. They're dealing with a stay-at-home order there. And I said, there's bad decision A, and there's bad decision B right now. And I have to just pick one of the bad decisions. And they both stink. And I share that with you because the people in this room, Jill Franken, Stacy Koistra, Erica Beck, my chief of staff, we have had some of the most tense. We've all cried at one point about this. The conversations we're having are gut-wrenching conversations. And to think that you have a group of city leaders that are all locked arms behind the door is not true, okay? We are duking this out every day on how we should be responding to protect this city and protect all those facets. And so what I want to reinforce is this is a resilient city, okay? We are going to recover from this. We're trying to minimize the damage done. And there is damage no matter how you look at it. There's a lot of damage already done to our business community. There's been a lot of voluntary compliance in our business community. We are already starting to work on our resiliency bounce back plan, excuse me. So what will we do when this is done? How do we get the economy back open? You hear that on the federal level. They're talking about opening up the economy. And here in South Dakota, we're like, open up the economy. Like I said, we're in the first inning. We're not even in that conversation yet. And so I'm unpacking all that just to let you know that there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that are going into these conversations right now, and it's not easy. And my counselors have hard decisions that they need to make on this. I will respect them either way in this, in whatever decision they feel is right, because quite honestly, I could put on a different hat right now and argue against this proposed ordinance. Okay, that's how tricky this is. But I have chosen to bring this stay-at-home ordinance forward. The only key point I want to make before I turn it over to Jill is that we're proposing that you consider this for 2 weeks, okay? A 2-week ordinance with the opportunity to extend. And you may ask, well, what's going to be different in 2 weeks? That will know if we can lighten this up or change this or not renew it. I'll tell you, the data changes in 2 hours right now. 2 weeks is an eternity in COVID land right now. And we'll have a first reading tonight. You will have 5 days to absorb this, to probably hear from a boat ton of constituents, if you're not already. I know I've heard from thousands of people on this. And honestly, by next Tuesday, we'll have different data sets as well. We'll know at our doubling rate right now of less than 4 days, between 3 and 4 days, we could be at 2,500 cases by next Tuesday, and we could be in a different situation as a city. And so thanks for letting me just be vulnerable, unpack where we're at and how we got to this point. With that, I'm going to turn over to Jill and let her go through, I think, some of the more granular elements of the ordinance.
All right, Jill Franken, Public Health Director with the city. There's a number of individuals that are here tonight, and first off, just a huge thanks to the EOC, your Emergency Operations Center, that's working on behalf of this community. Is tremendous, and there's some folks here, in addition to city, all our city staff, some folks that you may have some questions for, include Dr. Wilde and Dr. Elliott, and then Dr. Jen Tingley, our Chief Medical Officer for the city, are both here, but Dr. Elliott with Avera and Dr. Wilde with Sanford are here. So let's just go ahead and go through a couple things we have. So I just want to remind you of what we're trying to accomplish here, and I'm not going to, Mayor Tenhaken talked very eloquently about what we're trying to accomplish, but right now the responsibility and the objectives in the EOC are really to limit and slow the spread of illnesses and to minimize the deaths in our community. We're trying to preserve continuity of essential functions within the city. We're trying to minimize social disruption and minimize the economic impact. We're also working hard to coordinate messaging and to keep the community informed. So the next slide is really, I'm not going to go through this because Mayor Tenhaken did a really great job of talking through this, kind of the timeline of where we've been over this last little, right around a month. The next slide also talks about, the next 2 slides talk about the governor's orders that she provided to us as a community, and I'm not going to go through those in detail as well because Mayor Tenhaken was great to go through those. Just to remind us though that the first executive order that was issued 2020-13 or -12 I believe it was, that was the one that moved being and should to certain restrictions to shall and in her executive order. So that put some different requirements in place for our community. And then at the same time, we also were provided the order around Minnehaha and Lincoln County for stay-at-home for at-risk vulnerable populations and those older, greater than 65 years of age. So that just kind of gets us where I'm going to share some data here and go through why we feel the stay-at-home ordinance is so important. I think I'll take this moment, though, is to let you know that you've all should have received, I believe, an invitation for Friday afternoon, I believe it is, at 2 o'clock. And at that time, we'll be sharing some data that we're just really trying to sort through, even as of today, that will give you some modeling for our community as far as where we see hospitalization rates going. And I don't have that tonight, but that'll be some more information that you'll want to be able to see and digest as you consider this ordinance before next Tuesday. But this is really giving you Mayor Tenhaken talked about our doubling rates and how many days it takes us to double our number of cases. And so if you look here, you can see that the dotted line is our total number of cases along the lines of where we've the trajectory we've gone through, and we were really on a 4-day linear projection there to be by the end of the month at about 13,000, a little over 13,000 cases, but we are starting to get closer to that 3-day doubling rate, which is the next trajectory going up to be closer to 35,000 cases. And then you have that red line, and I'm going to talk more about where those communities come from, but that's really an average of all the doubling of some peer communities that we have been kind of benchmarking ourselves against from a per capita basis. And when you average all of their doubling rates, you can see how they have performed. And so I think that's important for you to understand that as well. The next one is breaking down the time frame a little bit tighter so you can see as well where we are at because of, looking from the 7th just till the 21st. And the 21st is a key date because that's really when the surge was really anticipated to take off. That's when we were going to start really seeing that spike to get us to where that peak would then happen. And so, when you think about that 21st and what we've experienced in the last probably week or so, it would seem to you like a surge, right? Based on what we've been hearing and our reports of cases, but it's just actually only beginning to take off. So this is that peer comparison that I want you to that I just want to spend a little time talking through. And so these are communities that share a density similar to us. And so it's really good for us to be able to see where we're at with just total number of cases as compared to some of those peer cities. But then to know, as you can well imagine, some of these communities are slightly maybe smaller than Sioux Falls. Actually, not very many of them. Most of them would be far larger. But you can kind of see where our total cases line up compared to those communities. And then you look at our per capita cases to the right, and you can see where we are at in a per capita perspective. So as of today, and we don't have the other communities' information, that's kind of always a lag of how quickly we can get their data. But today we're at 378 cases roughly per capita, and you compare that, we're really leading the way in a per capita rate for COVID in our community. We thought it would be good to break it down. If you think about, if we looked at without Smithfield, we get a lot of questions. So what would it, isn't Smithfield maybe, that's our kind of hotspot within our hotspot of our community. And so we started really looking at what would our rate be, our per capita rate be without Smithfield in. And you can still see we're still leading the way quite a bit except for Durham, North Carolina. And that was a community that when we started comparing ourselves to these communities, we right off the bat, I'll just tell you, we said, oh, we do not want to be Durham. We do not want to be Durham, North Carolina. They're starting to see a leveling off, and we're seeing our surge pass. So this is taking some of those, some communities too, just to give you a sense of when you think of that first day, that first case in each of our communities that are listed here, and granted, now, of course, we'd say to ourselves, we can't compare ourselves to New York City, right? Or we can't compare ourselves to New Orleans. But it is, when you think of a per capita rate, it just gives you some point of reference to be able to look at it from this perspective. And so you can see some of these communities that have really, surged. I mean, yes, New York's been really hit hard, as well as we're knowing New Orleans is really getting hit hard, but they're also starting to see that leveling off. And you can see our tail is going the other way with our surge really taking off. And again, you can see how we're doing with and without the Smithfield cases included. And then you see Minneapolis, for example, or you see Omaha, and those are the bottom two lines, and where they're at as compared to us. So this is a ranking. This gives you the ranking of where we are at per capita based on all MSAs, and so we haven't listed them all obviously here, there's too many, but we are number 17 for our per capita cases as you compare us to in a ranking perspective, and so felt like that was important for you to see. So flattening the curve. We've talked about it over and over again at many meetings, but this is obviously what we want to accomplish. We want to make sure that we can do our work to socially distance and prevent ourselves from contracting COVID to the degree that for those that do get sick and do need to be hospitalized, that there's enough services, there's enough nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists, et cetera, to be able to provide all the care we need, and that we don't overwhelm the system. Some of the things that we've learned today is that we are seeing some success, which is great. The governor announced today that while they were anticipating at a peak date, or at the peak of COVID in our state, we would be at needing 5,000 beds across the state. They've been able to refigure that to be 2,500. Now, mind you, that's a half of what they anticipated. That's still a large number for our state. But much more doable than when you think of 5,000. So this is what we've really been accomplishing towards, the mitigation effort. We are continuously reviewing our data. We're continuously following whatever possible sources we can to identify what should we be doing next, what should we be recommending to the community, where do we need to go in making sure we're mitigating the spread during this time period in our EOC operations and what we're trying to accomplish through our objectives. And so then, we keep, after we review, then we're reassessing. And that's why you've had so many council meetings about this, because after we've reassessed, then we've been compelled to bring additional measures I'll give a shout out to the Board of Health. They met again today. They've met so many times that it's difficult for me to keep track of how many times this board has met when they are typically a quarterly board meeting. And so, that's what we've just continued to review, reassess, and realign. So there's three things basically tonight, and I'm not presenting on all three of these, certainly, but I am just giving you, these are the three items that pertain to COVID in some way, shape, or form. And so the first one is really taking what we call our no lingering ordinance, and that's the policy that's in place right now that we're asking that be extended to May 15th. That one will be set to expire on the 21st. You've already extended that once, and this would be extending that again, and this would be for a longer period than we have in the past extended. The next would be the stay-at-home ordinance that you have before you. Also, this is that new stay-at-home ordinance that we're proposing tonight, and that would be effective from April 24th through May 8th. And then there's a transit resolution, and Jeff Eckhoff will be speaking to that resolution. So the stay-at-home ordinance is really under the principles, yet again, it's so basic and yet so complex, right? People are the safest right now when they're staying away from each other. And so this ordinance really is intended to make sure people are home unless they have essential reason to not be at home. And so it's really, that is the essence of what we're bringing to you tonight. We want people right now, all of us, to be home if we don't have an essential reason to leave our home. We want to protect everyone. We want each other to be as protected as possible right now. We're really counting on, just to, to give you kind of what we would want the outcome to be, is voluntary compliance with this. We have no intention that we are going to be, it would be horrible if we had to, penalize a lot of people in our community for doing this, because this is just simply public health trying to do our part to be able to make sure that our community can handle our surge. And so that's, you know, that's in a sense what we're trying to accomplish here. So this ordinance does identify when is it okay to leave your home. And it does outline that there's several aspects: critical infrastructure work, and that's listed. The CISA definitions spell out a lot of different essential or critical infrastructure work, and it spells that out. And so we would have that available on the city's website, as well as provide community education around that, but also, you know, making sure that we push out as much information about this ordinance as general as we possibly can once it is approved. It also allows for health and safety activities to be provided. It provides for, this is a little unique to some that you might see, where we still value and know that it's important. And because we're not so dense in our density, you know, our population density isn't so dense that it doesn't make sense for us still to get outside. It makes sense for us to still go on a walk while socially distant. It still makes sense for us to ride our bike. It still makes sense for us to do those types of things as long as we're managing those from a socially distancing 6 feet apart from people and not interacting in groups. It also provides for all, you know, any other necessary services just for activities of daily living, getting your groceries, you know, putting gas in your car if you're needing to, you know, go to someone's house to provide care to them, et cetera, which leads me to that next one, which is providing, being able to provide care to other people. If that's your role and that's what you have to do right now because you have a, say, an elderly grandmother that you have to go check on, you have to do things for them, that would still be able to be provided. And attending funerals, as long as they're maintaining that no more than 10 attendees at the funeral would be allowed as well. So the next slide, this just gives you a graphic of, you know, some of the essential critical infrastructure types of employment and workers that would encompass. It certainly isn't the entire list, but I think it's a pretty good overview of the categories, and many other are listed within on that website, that CISO website. In addition to that, we're also including some other folks that we believe are essential workforce and critical infrastructure for Sioux Falls, and that is construction workers who support the construction, operation, inspection, and maintenance of construction sites and construction projects. Workers such as plumbers, electricians, exterminators, and other service providers who are necessary to maintain safety, sanitation, construction materials, material sources, and essential operation of construction sites and projects. Professional services such as legal or accounting, insurance services, real estate services, like home inspections, title services, et cetera. Veterinary services are included, and inclusive of the support staff for those particular services. Employees of biotech companies, and employees of financial institutions such as banks, credit unions, and insurance companies. So again, that's an overview of this ordinance. I am grateful to you for all that you have put in place thus far. This is a team effort, right? And just as the mayor said, we have many different perspectives that we're bringing to this. I have the responsibility to bring the public health perspective to you and to do my job to bring my best recommendation with the support of the mayor and the support of the EOC team and the support of the health department. And quite frankly, I gotta tell you, the support of a lot of the community. I'm hearing so much from our community, and granted, they're gonna tell me, the health director, if they support me, right? But it's overwhelming to me, the amount of people that are telling me, we need to do this. We need to take this action. And so I come before you grateful to you and hope that you will consider this and hope that you will come to the next informational to hear more about what we will share with you that can help make you better help you be better informed and help our community be better informed as you consider this. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Director Franken.
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Staley?
Oh, are we taking comments now?
Yes,
Public input.
I thought it was public input.
it is.
I just had a request, Director Franken, if we could get a copy of those graphics you showed. I don't think we have those in our packet, do we? I'd like to have I need a paper copy of those, and I think the public needs to see that too. That's the first time I saw it. And
I apologize, that was last minute. Are you talking about the presentation?
yeah, that
Absolutely.
really helps.
Absolutely, thank you. I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Before we go up for questions, we'll open it up to public input. Come forward.
Bruce Danielson. Before we get too far along in this, I found it interesting that in the packet that was issued yesterday, that it said we had a meeting today, and there was a unanimous vote right from the start, and it's like being a soothsayer. All of a sudden, we have a meeting that didn't exist until today, but we already knew that everybody voted for it. Then I got looking further down, and Ms. Franken just went through the list of 5 items. But in the packet that was issued yesterday, there were 6 items. And it was saying that fitness centers and gyms, so long as they are in compliance with all ordinances, rules, and regulations relating to their operations during the COVID-19 emergency. It's not on the official agenda and item that's being placed before you today, because it's gone. And so right now we're in a situation where last week we had the city attorney issuing a ruling that said that it was the minor change that was going to be made in the item last week was substantive, it was substantial, so that that item could not be passed. We have a problem here. This body is just now violating open meetings laws of the state of South Dakota. The agenda has to have, according to 1-27-1-16, says that we have to have the actual item before you posted 24 hours before the meeting. You just violated the open meetings and open records laws that you have sworn to uphold. You cannot discuss this item tonight, or you will be in the same situation that the Walworth County auditor is in when she was arrested by the sheriff of Walworth County for violating the open meetings laws by not putting all of the proper documents in the agenda packet for everybody, and it could have remained. The issue that we have here is that it would have been very simple had the city attorney and the city clerk actually had one of you vote to amend the item. And many people saw this item last night or yesterday after it was posted, and now it's gone.
Thank you.
There's something wrong. No, we got 5 minutes during.
No, it's 3 minutes on the first reading.
So
3
we have
minutes
5
on
minutes during one of these.
3
That
minutes
is
on the first
rule.
reading.
So this is not public input at the start, so we have 5 minutes. So
Can we have a clarification? It's 3 minutes, isn't it?
What are we going to be doing to
Hold it.
properly deal with
Mr.
this?
Chair,
Yes.
it's 3 minutes public input on
On the first reading.
It's
That's-
5
no,
minutes.
No,
It's
quiet.
3 minutes.
5
Next up.
minutes on second, 5 minutes on second readings.
Next, thank you.
So you better consider dropping this item this week and putting it on next week for first reading, because you just screwed up
Thank you.
Not having the documents.
Come on up.
In as proper.
Sir.
Good evening. My name is Josh Kaiser. On the list that this wonderful lady showed, it did not show the trash service. We're on the front lines of picking up everybody's garbage. If we weren't working, everybody's garbage would pile up in their yard or in their garage. So everybody's thinking everybody else, grocery stores, hospitals, emergency EMTs, but they're not thinking garbage companies. I work for one. I've worked for a small one in Brandon for almost 2 years. So we're dealing with people's garbage every day. So I'd like some more of that. I've heard it on the radio once, thanking garbage services. But I'd like you guys to thank all the garbage companies in the Sioux Falls and Brandon areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Sanderson. I'm the Executive Director of the South Dakota Retailers Association. Retailers Association has more than 500 members in Sioux Falls. We represent restaurants, hardware stores, hotels, shoe stores, that kind of thing. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, robust health practices have been implemented to avoid the spread of this disease. We're following CDC guidance. Many businesses have closed. Others are offering curbside pickup and carry-out food service. They've implemented enhanced cleaning and sanitation practices, installed protective shields at checkout counters, positioned floor markers to encourage social distancing. They've limited the number of people who enter businesses at a given time. They've taken many other measures to protect their employees and the public. I'm here tonight to ask you to think about how this proposed stay-at-home ordinance would actually look in person, in practice, because I've received a number of questions from my members. What exactly does this stay-at-home order provide that isn't in effect with the current ordinances, the orders, and the safety measures that are already in place? A lot of businesses are confused about what actually it does and does not do. On one hand, the ordinance talks about all businesses being encouraged to stay open, but it doesn't seem to provide the mechanism to actually allow that to happen. Is going to work an essential activity? Can all employees of a business continue to go to work as they have been? It's not clear. I ask you to consider this. Many small businesses have applied for the Paycheck Protection Program loans, which require workforce levels to be maintained in order to qualify for loan forgiveness. If this ordinance prevents some employees from going to work and a business is unable to meet the PPP requirements as a result, is the city prepared to do anything, compensate those businesses for the difference? You know, in several states, stay-at-home orders have caused unintended consequences. Would this ordinance, for instance, prevent an individual from buying a tomato plant at the garden center, or getting shoes repaired or clothes laundered? Is that non-essential? Can an individual buy a baseball glove or a shotgun? Can an employee deliver a pizza, repair a car, install a washing machine, or bathe a dog? Anyone who violates this ordinance could be fined $500 a day, given 30 days in jail. They could also be subject to a suspension or revocation of their business license. Is the city planning to compile a list of essential businesses prior to the ordinance being adopted so that businesses who could potentially face these know where they stand? Certainly, the desire to protect public health beyond our current efforts is well-meaning. But making allowed activities harder to define, confusing to implement, and tough to enforce has never served the public. We don't oppose public health measures at all, but we do question unclear restrictions on small business. I encourage you to reconsider this. Thank you for your consideration.
Yes, sir. Anybody else? Come on up.
Hi, guys. Greg Nelson. I live a pretty good life, frankly. My wife actually owns a fitness center, so I'm a little curious on that point, but that's not why I'm up here. We all can't comfort death, but we can make data either really comfortable or really scary. And I work with brilliant people every day on data. And if we took Smithfield as a whole and all of the employees there, plus their direct family and contacts, and isolated that as a one-day drop on COVID, and took it to scale heading into it,
then a one-day rise, and the scale goes out. As you pass this, most likely, and review it over the week, I encourage you to look at those two slopes going out. And all of the COVID cases tied to Smithfield would be similar to like the USS Cole almost, or the Chicago prison, isolated, all happening in a contained environment. I realize those people are in our communities, just like we all are, but we won't stop them from going to Hy-Vee, Walmart, many other places that I go daily, frankly. Maybe it's irresponsible to go to Home Depot, but I go grab some stuff. And so as you guys look at how we're gonna close our economy, where Donald Trump is looking at opening the economy up, I encourage you to look at the data and maybe find some comfort in the data. Truly watch this week, see if the slope goes from, say, our 0 to 200 cases, then we have a spike to 800, and isolate all the Smithfield, even though they happen over about 6 days, isolate them to like one incident, pull out all the people that aren't tied to it, and then run your slope again and see where you really are next Tuesday or next Monday as you analyze it. I found the other interesting point from the gentleman who keeps speaking on the fitness centers and gyms and falling off as well. Addiction has many different vices, pro and con. So I live with a fantastic woman who loves fitness, just like Paul. She's addicted to fitness. She'll hate me for saying that, but we all can say you can get out and run, bike, do other things. The fitness centers I've gone to, and I have been in a great life. My wife owns CrossFit Sioux Falls. Those places are so clean. It's incredible. 10 people or less at all times. Anybody is welcome to come in at absolutely any time whatsoever. Anytime unannounced, check them out. Go visit with Nick Ovenden. Go drop into Great Life. I'm not going to speak for him, but check them out. Check out all of these businesses that are just trying to find the balance. We have members who are unhappy we're open. Members who are happy we're open. You don't win. You guys won't win tonight. I won't win tonight. We won't win tomorrow. But look at the data, because data will lead you. You'll never find comfort in death and fear. Death and fear is scary. But you can find comfort in data, life, and living. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Dan Kester. I'd like to say I think you've done a great job handling the situation up until the stay-at-home ordinance. You made a comment not that long ago tonight that you as mayor don't like that you have to make decisions on health, business, and liberties. With all due respect, you don't get to make decisions on liberties. Governor Noem doesn't, and President Trump doesn't. Our liberties are dictated by the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So I feel like this ordinance is unnecessary. Most people are already following stay-at-home guidelines, and the people who aren't, this ordinance is unlikely to make them stay at home any more than, what did you say earlier at 10 o'clock, that speed limits make you not speed. I feel like it's unconstitutional. It's a blatant violation of the First Amendment, possibly the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, and I feel like it's unenforceable. If you get pulled over or cited for this, all a person has to do is say, you know, I'm going to work, I'm going to get aspirin, whatever. I ask that this ordinance not get put in place, and we continue to work on this without trampling on the rights of everyday citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, my name is Laura Hubble. I am a nurse. I am also a scientist. I have taught immunology at the college level to nurses. And I am very disappointed in how this has happened and how you have not stopped the cross-contamination at Smithfield. I'm so disappointed, by the way. Oh, let me say, City Charter, Chapter 112, you do have ordinances on how to stop cross-contamination at food processing plants. So Smithfield obviously was not doing its job. And what's happening is now, since Smithfield, a Chinese-owned company infected with the Chinese virus, was not doing its job. And what happened is that food service establishments gets all the blame. They get all the bad parts of this ordinance. This ordinance, by the way, is unconstitutional, so unconstitutional that I was on the phone today with the Secretary of State's office, and I have filed a petition for recall for the municipality of Sioux Falls for the mayor's position. The reason why is because this ordinance tramples on your rights of due process. It says right here that anyone in violation of this ordinance, any business, shall, following a hearing, result in a mandatory recommendation to the state of South Dakota Secretary of Revenue that such business's license be suspended or revoked. In the event the hearing requirement is waived, then such recommendation will be made without a hearing. That is without due process. That is against our God-given rights. That is why I do have a petition for recall in my possession, and I have the reasons here, if you want to look at them. And I think it's horrible that we charge and we put the onus on businesses that are doing their best because of the infractions of one food processing plant. I have these here, if anyone wants to look at them. I also will be available also, anybody who wants to carry a petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Welcome.
Hi, Caleb Veldhouse. I live in the Southeast District. I, like a few of the others today, have agreed with everything that has happened thus far, but I'm requesting the City Council to vote no against the stay-at-home order. And I mainly come here and ask a couple questions. My first question, and I don't know if this can be answered now or when it can be answered, but can both ordinances be approved at the same time and move forward together? Or is it a pick one or the other next Tuesday? And then what I would ask the mayor's office to do and the city council to do is when we this whole entire duration of studying COVID and looking at models, we talk about health models. And we talk about infection rates and hospitalizations and ICUs and deaths. And all of that is projecting forward and looking forward, and we take the data we have and we look forward. What we have never seen, what I've never seen, and what we haven't done, and what I would urge the mayor's office to do is provide some economic projections. If we do this stay-at-home order, you talked about a 25%, 35%, 50% decrease that we can get. I'd like to know, okay, if we do a stay-at-home order, how many unemployed are we going to have in 15 days, 30 days? You know, what is our homelessness going to be like? Are we going to have, you know, what's our depression rates going to be? I think when we are looking at this problem, we're only looking at one set of facts, and I'd really like to see two set of facts, because what you're really trying to decide is, as we tighten the noose on the business, are we doing the same proportionate fight against coronavirus? And if those aren't proportioned, then we have to try to get them equalized. And I think we need to look at the economic forward-looking data to actually make an informed decision. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Matt Anand. I'm the Executive Director with the South Dakota Independent Auto Dealers Association. So I'm here on two levels. One is transportation, of course, and I did see in your listings on your website that transportation is included. However, working with some of my constituents across the nation and our national association, there's some interpretation questions on what you consider to be vital transportation. So on that list that comes from your website, I would invite you to look especially at bullet points 1, 10, and 14, where I believe it's very clear, not only for automotive repair and maintenance, but for automotive sales, as it does talk about transportation, equipment, manufacturing, and distribution. And that's exactly what car dealers are, distributing vehicles that are related to transportation. I would also encourage you to think about transportation of your personal vehicle. It needs to be maintained and they have to be sold. That's the best social distancing you can do. Be in your own car instead of Uber, Lyft, public transportation. And if you're enacting a transit resolution to back off on that even more, cars, vehicles, personal vehicles become even more important to us. Then I'm also here because most of our members are small businesses to discuss what this effect is on small businesses. And I would echo what the retailer said about the PPP and the EIDLs that these businesses have taken out, with an understanding that they keep employees employed and that they take these loans out for operations. Well, if they're not allowed to operate, now we're stepping on federal toes, and what are the ramifications of them not being allowed to use that money the way it was designed to be used? It seems, according to what I've read in this, that the small businesses are the ones that are being most negatively affected by this. Big businesses can seem to handle this kind of thing a little easier, but there are some businesses at 14, 21 days, that's going to put them out of business. We're also encouraging people then not to do business in Sioux Falls, but go to T, go to Harrisburg, go to Del Rapids, go to Brandon, go buy your car here, go get your hair cut over there, go do your other business in other towns. So enacting it just in Sioux Falls, all that's doing is sending people to different towns. So we would ask you to relook at this, take a look at what the ramifications are, look at your essential activities, which 14 out of the 15 are transportation related, and take a look at what that would do. You're encouraging businesses to stay open, but if they don't have customers, how can they stay open? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Troy Eichman. I represent Furniture Mart USA, and we have about 1,200 people in our community and in our business, all of which will be directly affected by this decision. We do believe that furniture is an essential item. We do believe that while people are ill, they will need beds, adjustable base beds. We do believe strongly that this is an essential item. So as you assess what some of the other community members have talked about, and you make the decision on the health versus the business, please understand that there is another business that hasn't even been talked about today, and that is home furnishing. We do believe that household furniture should be considered essential. Many people are displaced from their places of business and are now officing in their home. We do also sell home office furniture, and many businesses have been shut down, so people are forced to gather at their home, and so we do sell outdoor furniture. Those are the three items that we feel are and should be considered essential. I do also want you to understand we are taking the health risk very seriously, following the protocols outlined by the CDC. One furniture store in town is over 150,000 square feet. It's pretty easy for us to keep social distance there. We're not seeing the levels of traffic or customers in our store. There are more people in this room than come into our furniture store in an entire day. So shutting us down doesn't make good business sense, and it follows the CDC guidelines and recommendations. Lastly, I would echo some comments that it's important to take this virus seriously, as I think you said, Mayor Tanakin, and that we have to balance a simple need to ensure that these businesses remain when we're on the other side of this. And I know that that's a heavy decision. I appreciate the leadership that you all bring into this, and thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair here, you know, the mayor let people speak over 3 minutes when it was convenient for the mayor when we had whatchamacallit a couple months ago here. You need to ask Chief Burns, because I've talked to the police today. The police call for service is really high. The sergeant that I spoke to had to stay neutral and said that I hope I'm speaking on this topic because it's going to be thrown in our laps. We don't need a shelter in place. We have a police officer that's worried about it. His mother has diabetes and lives in a household. And he's against the shelter in place. They cannot come up here and they cannot say because they have to be neutral here. But we have to think about our local police department here. We're not going to play dirty politics here and say the police department's hunky-dory with this, because they're not. They're going on call to call to call. If we enforce this ordinance, people's going to be calling and they have to go to these calls to ticket or arrest or whatever on this shelter in place here. Christine Noem said 1 of 5 governors yet to issue a statewide stay-at-home order, saying it is the job of the individuals, not the government, to exercise their right to work, to worship, and to play, or to even stay at home. And I'm going to bring up the illegal massaging, and I'm only going to do it a little bit, because it's still under investigation. We got people from China coming in, illegals, every week. You best believe it. Every week prostituting. Don't you think that's a health issue? Coronavirus? We got them. Thailand, China. They're coming in every week. They're still rolling in at these 2 locations, and I'm keeping an eye on it. We cannot stop the coronavirus. So when we're done with this, we need to get passionate about our illegal immigrants spreading diseases and prostitution in businesses here in Sioux Falls, because that seems to be on the back burner a lot here. Has anybody checked on the illegal massage parlors, that they're hot spots? People coming from China? Nobody's thought about that, huh? Maybe Mr. Jill needs to go with the police and go check these hot spots, because there's 2 hot spots, illegal massages. They're not licensed. Mr. Mayor, I respect you as a mayor here, but I think you're going a little bit too overboard with this. The police is going to be overwhelmed with this ordinance. I know because I talked to them. And hopefully your chief of police will step up to the plate and do what he can not to accept this shelter in place on behalf of his police department here.
Thank you. Who's next? Come on up. Hello.
Good evening. I'm Heidi Teal, and this is my sister Haley Ziegler, and we are of Cliff Avenue Greenhouse and Garden Center. And it's easier for me just to read instead of go into everything. So as our state and community responds to COVID-19, we commend the steps that the local government is taking to mitigate the impact of the virus and keep our community safe and healthy during this unpredicted time. It has become a possibility that all non-essential retail businesses close their doors to lessen their exposure to the virus. Today, I'm speaking on the behalf of me and my sister and of all of us small business owners. As daughters who have been a part of this family business since childhood, and women who have been a long part of Sioux Falls community, both born and raised, I wanted to address that we, Cliff Avenue Greenhouse and Garden Center, and other garden centers here in Sioux Falls, are essential retail businesses. To begin, I want to make it known that we as a business support the sensible steps the public health officials may deem necessary to combat COVID-19. At the same, we urge public officials to consider garden centers among the retail operations determined as essential, allowing the business owners to option to stay open as a public service. Consumer horticulture contributes to $346 billion in the U.S. economy. It creates over 2 million jobs in the United States. But the story doesn't end here. Horticulture benefits the health and happiness of every citizen in our community. In South Dakota, we are resilient and resourceful, and we have faced adversity and provided opportunity to produce our own food and manage our shortage of supply of produce. Millions of Americans engage in food production at home, and many more, including fellow peers here in Sioux Falls and surrounding communities, are sure to follow since the crisis unfolds. Like many garden centers, our neighboring Midwest states, for example, Minnesota and Illinois, are taking all necessary precautions as suggested by the CDC and public health officials, providing the option to order online, through the phone, and curbside pickup. We provide masks for our employees. We provide both indoor and outdoor space. We will make sure that our 25% of our occupancy is less, or at least that. And we'll also, we do very many protocols to ensure the safety and the staff our staff for our customers. We provide a safe space not only for our employees who rely on us as a business for healthcare and other income, but a safe space for our locals to be immersed in a little forgiving place, to forget about the world for just a little bit. We're not the only ones to provide for customer products, but also for our environment of emotional health. Many of our products that we sell are agriculture, and I believe that's deemed on your scale over there, but I'd like to be able to stay open. We offer seeds, edible plants, and other necessary tools.
Okay, ma'am.
Together are essentials to maintaining a healthy environment, both mentally and physically, for our community. We'd like to provide that where our customers...
We're at 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
My name is Haley Ziegler, and I also work at Cliff Avenue Greenhouse, and I also am an owner with my sister and my husband. Just a few logistics about our business. As a garden center, our main source of income is through the selling of plants. This means that we cannot hold our stock of annuals and perennials till next year. For example, yes, if you have a pillow or a book or something, yes, that will keep. Our plants will not keep, especially the vegetables and the annuals for sale. We do start growing these in January and throughout the spring to have them ready and prepared to sell by the first week of May. This is our investment of plants. This is how we make a living. As many of you know, living in South Dakota, we have very long winters. Our growing season is very, very short, and after bearing the brunt of snowstorms in the spring, we're already geared up to sell plants, as many as we can in our short period of time. We also want to let you know that the investment of the plants would basically be gone, and that would basically sink us, because this is what we do. This is our bread and butter. This is how we get through the year, and we have to make our money in that short spring, summer season. And we have had a lot of construction at both my location on West 41st Street, and now we're dealing with construction over on 26th Street, which is also a 2-year project. So we have been losing revenue, and we would like to be considered necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Stenga. I also like to work out every day, so I sit where your wife's sitting. I buy all my plants at Cliff Avenue Greenhouse. I will be there buying plants no matter what. $500 ticket, I'll pay it. My mom will be the second one. Where do you start? People coming in, people going to Florida, New York, New Jersey, Chicago, and they come back to Sioux Falls. What happens to them? Do they get quarantined for 12 days, or do they get to run around town? I had some people come back from Florida a week ago. The whole family had COVID. What went through the airport with these people walking through the airport? Or what happened on the airplane itself? What are we doing to the people that are coming from these states? 2, we have an in-house or for Minnesota. You ever drive around town and see how many cars are from Minnesota and Sioux Falls? What are we going to do about that? They're coming to Sioux Falls so they can have fun, but yet they don't have to stay in Minnesota. In Pierre, they shut down a lot of the places where you can back your boat in because they get so many people from Minnesota coming in fishing, stealing our fish. But now people from South Dakota can't fish because they're shut down. Because why? We let people from Minnesota in. The other question is, we're going from Smithfield. How long did the city know about Smithfield? Did they just find out about it a week ago, or did they know about it a month ago? I believe they knew about it a long time ago, but they're not letting anybody know. 3,700 people. What did we do with them 3,700 after we shut the plant down? We let them run around town. We have families that live in houses. There's 2, 3 families living in one house. You've already contaminated 10 to 15 people. Where did them 10 or 15 people go? All around town. So what did we do? We threw them right out on the street instead of stating that, hey, Smithfield, this is what we have to do. But we didn't do that. Comes down to trust. Do we trust our officials? Do we trust what's being done in the city? People in this city do not trust. Not one person have I talked to within the last week or so said one thing about closing the city down. They want to figure out how we're going to get this city back running again because there's too many people out of work. It's time that we start putting our city back to work, not taking it away.
Thank you. Hello.
Hey, my name's Dan. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls. I live in the Southeast District. I have a couple things I'm hoping the city can consider. One, I know the city has said that they're not shutting businesses down, but if you don't allow the employees to go to the business, how can the business operate? So, I mean, effectively, you've shut the business down. And then in response to shutting those businesses down or not letting the employees go to work, what does the city of Sioux Falls plan to do about that? So at the federal level, we have a stimulus package that's coming or on its way. Some people have already got it deposited into their bank accounts. And we have the Sioux Falls Fund that allows people to donate there, and they can then petition in and potentially get money out of that. But all that money so far has been footed by private citizens and businesses. And the city of Sioux Falls put $1 million in there, but that's tax revenue, right? Or that's revenue that's coming from businesses. So far, businesses have footed the bill, private citizens have footed the bill, and for this fiscal period that the city is in, you guys approved the maximum amount that you could approve in the taxes for, I can't think of the word, basically residential taxes or property taxes, yeah. So I'm wondering, can the city of Sioux Falls potentially consider a decrease in the 2.4% increase that you had approved? The second thing is I'm a computer science math major. I work in the private sector, and one of the things I do in my job is I build data models. Director Franken came up here and showed you her data models. I would be interested in knowing what the coefficient of the determination factor is in those models. So it's essentially the R-squared value of those models. It determines the predictability of the model. You're adjusting your model every 4 days, which means that it must not have been or had very much predictive power because you can only trust it for 4 days. So if you keep adjusting the model's going to look great, but I wouldn't recommend that we necessarily trust all the data that we're looking at to determine if we have a stay-at-home ordinance. Thank you. One of the great things about America is that when we're voting, we still get a voice, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Ryan Chase. I'm a pastor at Emmaus Road Church here in Sioux Falls. And as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, I believe that Jesus is king over all people, all places, all powers. So we respect and honor you. We pray for you diligently. God's word calls us to, and so we have great regard for you, especially because we realize that you serve the public. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for bearing this incredible weight and responsibility right now. We have a lot of respect for you in that. And we recognize that your authority is derived authority. You receive that most immediately, noticeably, from the people who elect you, but ultimately you have that authority because of God, who institutes government for the well-being of society. And I just want to urge you to consider the massive overreach that a stay-at-home ordinance is. As many others have pointed out, it's totally unenforceable. It's sad to stand here and listen to business owners get up and make a case that they matter in our community. How in the world would you actually enforce this when everybody could make a case in court that what they're doing is essential to provide for their families? It's a Pandora's box kind of thing. And so in reaction to what's going on, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I take this coronavirus seriously. I have a son with severe medical complications. He's immunocompromised. He lives on a ventilator. He's been on a ventilator since the moment he was born, so that's 8 years. So we take this seriously. We take responsibility for ourselves as a family. I think that this ordinance is enacted in order to make people who are panicking feel better. Those people who are most scared are already staying at home, and they're begging you to do something because they're worried about everybody else, which already tells you the kind of culture this is going to create, where neighbors are telling on neighbors and reporting other people who are out when they're not supposed to be. That's not the kind of society that we want to live in. As a pastor, I'm wondering why churches and houses of worship weren't listed on there as essential. That is absolutely essential. Right now we're live streaming. We're part of a church plant, so we don't have our own building. We live stream from somebody's house, and I can imagine getting a knock on the door from police officers on a Sunday morning because neighbors saw a few cars outside. There are only a handful of us inside. We're under 10 people. But curious why that's not on the list. And that just proves the point, the problem that this will be to actually prove which business, who decides, by what authority, by what standard do you decide and determine whose jobs are essential, what services are essential in this community. Thank you. We are praying for you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, City Council again, and Judy, I want to thank you all for what you guys doing and what you guys done until now. Social distancing, taking care of ourselves, wear gloves, I done that. We all doing that. I think City of Sioux Falls and the people in this city respond very much in a good way. And I always, when I speak in this city, I bring different perspective to our community because I'm coming from different culture, different country. I came in from the country, they put the AK-47 in my hand to government telling me where I go, where I not go, how I eat, where I sleep, what I believe, what I not believe. I fought this war for 2-3 years. I've been shot twice in that country for a freedom. I, as a man, as a human being, to choose what I like to do, long as I'm not breaking the law and not hurting anybody else. I come to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, United States, land of freedom and democracy. And I believe of our Constitution. As a free man, I don't think city should be telling me where I go, where I'm not going. City have right to tell me how I protect myself, how I protect my family, how I be safe. We do those. But today, you tell me I cannot go to my son's house to see my beautiful grandkids. I will do it, I'm sorry. I will go out when I need to eat food. Ladies and gentlemen, I know a couple of businesses, they tell me they might shut down next couple of weeks because they not afford to pay $3,000 rent and utility. And now we put 2 other 3 weeks top of it. We really try to save something, but at the same time, we destroy a lot of other things. We should have all the rule how we protect ourselves. I used to wash my hands 3 times a day. In the breakfast time and lunch and supper. Now I wash my hand 8-9 times. I wear gloves when I put the gas in my car. Those are all good advice you guys give us as a citizen. And we follow your leadership. And I personally trust you guys. But to tell me I'm not allowed from now on to go out, to open my business, maybe I make a couple of dollars and put the food in front of my kids and my grandkids, is not right decision. You keep, and police department, how are we gonna stop? Governor said nobody can go out 65 years old. I go to Costco, I go to those places, I see people 70 years old. I'm 67 years old and I'm outside right now. How we force something we not have a capability to force it? I encourage you guys, go through this process one more time and advise all of us as a citizen to follow your leadership, how we protect ourselves, how we protect our community.
Thank you, sir.
And how we bring community back to where we used to be a couple months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up.
Jackie Thompson. I am and Jody Hoffman, and I'm a cosmetologist here in town, and I work at the salon too. And first off, just want to say, my books have already dropped 50%. 50% in like a week. So I guess I get a lot of people still saying, oh, you're still open, you know, the people like comforting, it makes them feel good, you know. People that don't feel safe or don't feel like it's their time to come in, they don't. They have an illness, you know, feeling like it's not their time, they don't come to their appointment. But there's a lot of people that still want to come and feel good. And somebody previously said about the PPP, you need to have 75% of your workforce. Otherwise, there's no money. And up until this point, there was really a lot of stylists are having a lot of problem get that funding. I know I heard you earlier today and you said that's all in place. It's not. So I just feel like, you know, it's good for personal hygiene, mental health, feel good. And you all kind of look like you just had haircuts. So I guess it's, I don't know, you say you're gonna do this for 2 weeks. I have friends that are in Minnesota. It's 2 weeks, it's 4 weeks, now it's 6 weeks, now it's 8 weeks. And they're not gonna have a business to go back to.
Yeah, our fear is that it's 2 weeks, but then it's gonna be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and we have like one of the cleanest salons.
Yeah, come in and check it out.
Come in, I mean, and same with the gym that this gentleman had said, I'm addicted, I go to Great Lap every morning, I'm the first one there at 5, thank goodness they changed it from 5 instead of 6, and they say that's like their grossest, nastiest gyms are the sweatiest, grossest places. That gym is like spot on clean, and there's never over 10, there's usually less.
And what we have been doing between every customer, granted, like I said, some people are choosing not to come and that's their choice and I can respect that, but I will be there when this is over for them. But we are sanitizing after every client, chair, shampoo bowl, everything, tools, actually probably we're cleaner than a fast food drive-up.
Right.
So I just want you to take that into consideration. I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Stephen Ciano. I've gone to the Department of Health in the past about people not defending us, people, particularly I reported Southeastern Behavioral in the VA, and I was actually to the state, and it was covered up. Now, I am unsure if the Department of Health is trying to, is concerned about caring for us, we the people. And like, what is their true motivation, and what is their basis of their models? They're not trustworthy, certainly, as others have reported here. You cannot say that fatalities have been lowered. You don't know that. Some of us have been ill with various things and have survived, and some may die. Perhaps you all claim to be believers in a higher power. Perhaps that is God's will, that some will die and some will live. And who are we to step in the way of God's will, if that is your belief, if you are true believers? I don't know where this came from. Certainly, a lot of what you say makes sense. The 6-foot limit makes sense. Masks, yeah, because we understand how diseases are spread. That makes sense anyway. And as others have pointed out also, this disease was probably around a lot sooner and was in Smithfield a lot sooner. Now, if you're going to quarantine something, what about all those hogs that have nowhere to go now? And these farmers, these hog farmers that have to hold on to them and feed them, which costs something, why not, if these people are already ill in the plant, why not have them continue where they are? As you look in the history of where the public health laws were based upon, the, what do you call it, closing off the cities, they would in the Renaissance days. You can, no, what's that word? What's that word? I'm missing it. Wow, I'll draw a blank. So anyway, why don't you just keep the people in Smithfield working at their job, keep it flowing? That just makes a lot more sense. You don't close the barn door after the horse or the hog is out. Makes no sense. And also, maybe something that the health department could promote is disinfecting a certain way. I understand that ultraviolet light, hydrogen peroxide could be used as a disinfectant and would be safe to the people working there.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Cooper Caraway. First, I'd like to, maybe you guys can talk to me later. I'd like to know where you're getting your haircuts. My barber's been social distancing for about 3 weeks, and I'm really struggling here.
Right there, those guys.
Thank you. I'm elected president of the Sioux Falls AFL-CIO. We're part of over 36 local unions. We have thousands of union members and their families. And so first, I want to take this time to thank you all, particularly you, Mayor Paul, for your thoughtfulness when it comes to this issue and your willingness to act boldly. I rise on behalf of my members in support of this ordinance, and I challenge you all to be a little bit bolder. 2 weeks ago, I had to get a COVID test because of my proximity to union members who had tested positive. I had to get a COVID test. It didn't take long. I was there overnight at Sanford Emergency Room, and I spoke to about 3 nurses throughout my time there, and they didn't know who I was, but every single one of them told me that they felt confused, they felt frustrated, and they felt abandoned by our state government. So many working class people across Sioux Falls and South Dakota feel confused and frustrated, particularly when they hear comments from our governor that would make Ayn Rand blush by saying when we call out for a moratorium on evictions, when people call out for a moratorium on utility shutoffs to the mayor and she refuses to do those things. It's very frustrating and confusing, and we understand the position you're in. The position you're in is not fair. It's not fair that you should have to meet this occasion and act as boldly as you've been forced to. I understand that, but it is the responsibility. It is the reality. Now, we support this proposed ordinance. We also support the Sioux Falls Tenants Union's call for a moratorium on evictions and utility shutoffs. Working people in Sioux Falls and around the state, we want desperately to do the right thing. We want desperately to protect our families, to protect our communities. We don't want to get anybody sick, and we want to be able to pay our bills at the same time. And we want to follow bold leadership. In a time like this is a historic time. My daughter's 7. When she's in high school, she will read about this in history books. And we want to follow your bold leadership. But we cannot wash our hands if our water is shut off. And we cannot stay at home if we are thrown out of our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hard to talk with that. My name is Bruce Meyer. I'm a lifelong resident of Sioux Falls in this sense. I've lived here till I was 8. Went to grade school in Watertown, high school in Marshall, Minnesota, Augie for a couple years, and moved back here in 1985. So I feel like I have a good Sioux Falls perspective. I'm always hoping that our mayor and our council are the best and brightest that we have around here. I'm here because I think we are overreacting to ever-changing models from the so-called experts. You've seen Ms. Franken and all kinds of people on network news all over the country, Dr. Fauci. All the people have changed their models repeatedly. And if we do this, what change would that have made in Sioux Falls to the Smithfield? They would have been essential. They would have still been there. Wouldn't have changed one single thing about that. Only a private business company decision is going to change that. So we have a corona hotspot. My encouragement to Sioux Falls is to be a leader in not overreacting. That's just as bold leadership as making an overreacting decision. So instead of doing that, if half of Sioux Falls or a third of Sioux Falls or Lincoln, Minnehaha counties were infected, I'd agree with this 100%. But it's not. Between 0.5% and 1% of the total population have an infection. So now all the people that are out of work, Smithfield is the exception, not the rule. If we get 200 more per day at 6,000 or whatever in 30 days, we're still at maybe a 2 or 3% infection rate, not a death rate. Apparently, what we're doing, the responsibility that all these people have shown in here of wearing masks, protecting their businesses, having them clean, is what's working. This is what we need to do. We need to show that. I don't want anybody's time of grace here on earth to be shortened in any careless way ever. That just is not right. But to succumb to unreasonable fear, that's not leadership to me. I prefer to see how we can find a way to overcome with South Dakota common sense and lead our state, maybe even our country, back to work. Carefully, smartly, positively, with the best safety, but not stay at home. To be sure, this is an anecdotal thing. We've heard a lot of them, but they seem to tell the same story. I have a lady I work with whose mother was infected with the coronavirus. Fortunately, she's recovered. She's 80 plus years old and Prince of Peace. But this lady had to close her business. There's no business. How is she going to pay her bills to help her mother recover? How is she going to pay the rent when the landlord says, come pay the rent? This is, as I say, anecdotal, but this is going to multiply with every server, every small business owner, every bartender, everybody in town. Those $1,200 stimulus checks are going to be spent. People already got them. They're going to be gone by the time you enact this ordinance. And then where are they going to be? I think it's time to show that responsibility that South Dakota citizens have shown already and lead the way in helping our country get back to work in a smart, common sense, protective way.
Thank you. Hello?
Hi, good evening. Will Anderson with the Sioux Falls Tenants Rights Union again. I just want to, again, reiterate what Mr. Caraway said. And I also want to hearken back to some of the words I heard from you all. I heard you say, we are trying to minimize the damage. We want to protect everyone. We don't want to look back in 5 years and say that we didn't do enough. Okay? The city charter, it outlines 4 things that you don't have the authority to do. 1, levy income taxes. 2, increase gaming. 3, issue more liquor licenses. Or 4, incur additional debt. There's nothing in there that says that you could not regulate what a licensee of a rental license does. They shall not be able to obtain a forcible entry and detainer for non-payment during the course of this stay-at-home order. Like Cooper said, it's hard to stay at home if you don't have one. I would encourage you to think of those less fortunate than you and encourage you to do the right thing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Paul. Thank you to the council. There's a lot of really great comments up here tonight, so I'm not going to reiterate most of them specifically. By the way, my name is Joshua Sopko. I'm a local retailer here in Sioux Falls. The South Dakota Retailers Association made some great comments about the questions that us retailers are facing. It has a lot of stress already added into what we're already facing. We're already trying to do everything we can, and the added just questions that we have about what to do moving forward with the stay-at-home order with our employees, with how we pay those employees, and how we continue to see customers and operate our businesses. Specifically, even if we close our retail doors, can we still ship our packages? Can we still go to our offices and do shipping? If our printer breaks, can I go get toner? Can I go do these things? And then to add to that, like the good pastor said too, we have this police force that is going to be, there's a question of how it's going to get enforced, right? And I know it was reported that there's going to be no essential papers required for individuals to carry around, but does that mean that police are still going to be stopping us as we're walking down the street or pulling us over and questioning our motives as where do we go? And that just, it mimics this Gestapo-style police, and I don't use that term lightly, I really don't, but that just feels in my gut just so wrong. And you mentioned, Paul, at the beginning of this, that we have constitutional rights and these liberties, and you have to make decisions over there, and liberties always come first. It's the foundation of the country. It's where we came from. It's what we're built on. I believe that's how we need to move forward. The last thing that I just want to mention, as we're making decisions, or you guys are making decisions about this stay at home, it's going to be 2 weeks, and people mentioned 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Without a plan in place that says, or data models that say when we reach data point X or Y or Z, then we can start to reduce. But there's not that. We're just saying, well, we'll see what happens. And that just feels to me like we're just flying blind, that we have no idea what to expect, where to go. We know that it's going to increase, so we can project numbers are going to go to X percent, and then when that percentage gets to whatever, and then it starts to reduce by X percent, then we can move forward. There's no timeline attached to that, which seems scary. but at least we have some way to look every day at the data and say, okay, so we're getting to where we can move forward and start to relax a little bit. So those are some of the things that I want you to consider as we look forward. I appreciate you guys. I know that this is not a scenario that anybody would dream of being in. I don't envy your jobs at all, so I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Bridget Myers. I'm from here in Sioux Falls. I own 2 businesses here in the city, one called Relax on Your Time Sauna and Massage. I am a self-serve health and wellness facility. We have infrared saunas, infrared biomats, hydrotherapy tables, and massage chairs. Virtually 0 human contact. They all have private suites. They're in the rooms by themselves. I feel that that business should be deemed essential because there is 0 human contact, but it's still benefiting the public. If you've done your research on infrared saunas and infrared biomats, folks, we should be packed to the kilt in all of our infrared sauna businesses in the city. They are the #1 thing available to you to kill viruses and to heal your body and to help your immune system. I wish that there was more of that out from our Department of Health. All we hear is doom and gloom and negativity, and we never hear, take vitamin C, drink more water, get rest, go to an infrared sauna. There are lots of things here in your community from businesses that are still open that can help you fight and battle this virus. Folks, this is not going away. And we're gonna have to get back to work, and we're gonna have to go to exposure, and we're gonna have to go through this at some point. So if we're not doing things to help benefit our body and keep ourselves healthy, how are we gonna battle COVID when we go back to opening all the businesses and everything we have? I also own a massage business. I'm the vice president of the Board of Massage Therapy. I feel that what I do is medical massage. I have prescriptions from doctors for people to see me. And according to your ordinance, you do not have us listed as essential. We are also not listed as essential with the state of South Dakota. I'm currently under the Department of Health. I have a health license. So I feel that I should be able to stay open, but you have not listed me here, and you've left it very, very gray. And so people are going to be confused. Are we open or are we not open? Are they going to be getting a fine to come see me or not? I've got quite a few that are still staggering in, floating me along. So I don't have to take out loans, and I don't have to borrow money. Most of the loans are geared towards people with employees. So I want you to know that. I have yet to find anybody from South Dakota that got those loans that's a self-employed massage therapist with no employees. So if there are, please contact me and reach out to me, because everything I'm looking at, I'm striking out. I'm looking, actually, I'm gonna probably have to do NOM's loan, which is the 0% for 3 months for expenses. That's about my best option, which sucks because I have a kid in college, and every time I take out a loan or add debt, it affects my daughter's interest rate for college, which costs us a lot of money in the long run. I want you to really consider this. I cannot believe we're even here, guys. I thought the 10, less than 10 was what we were gonna do, and we were gonna stick it there so people could trickle along, and people will still practice social distancing. I think you should support our governor. I'm disappointed you're not doing that. It looks bad that our city's going against our governor, and I think you need to pull this out tonight, and this needs to be voted no on it tonight. This is too dangerous what you guys are doing. It's a slippery slope. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening, Zach Negebauer. I'll keep this brief. A lot of what was said tonight was kind of what I wanted to say, but I'm a business owner, non-essential business owner. I think it's really important that we distinguish it. In the bill, it says we encourage all businesses to be open, but yet to me, it appears like it would be a crime if my employees or customers come to the business. And I just think it puts us at really tough odds. I think it's really important we clarify that part of it. I want to echo some stuff said here tonight where I think it's extremely important that we see the economic data. You know, if we're going to be shut down for 2 weeks, if it goes to 4 to 6, what does that economic data look like? So I think there's a lot of fear that we could have 20, 30, 40% unemployment. And I think everybody has the right to see that data, and that data probably is pretty accurate because we have a lot of statistics to back it. And then lastly, just to, reiterate too, I think as a citizen, we all have the freedom to stay at home if we need to. My dad is 70. He's exercising that freedom. He's staying at home. He thinks he should, and that's great. I also think that we should trust our citizens to do what's right. Our business owners are doing a great job. Give the citizens trust. If we want to go out and buy flowers, we want to go out and exercise at a gym, give us that trust to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Hubble again.
Okay, I
Just got a
believe you
message.
can you have public input more than
Has
once?
everybody else done that has, does
No,
anybody else
I
want to?
believe we're one per night. Thank you.
Because I didn't use my full 3 minutes.
Sorry, ma'am.
Okay, Epic Times just said, Communist China visited Smithfield.
Thank you.
months before
Anybody
the
else
coronavirus.
have anything to speak tonight who hasn't spoken? No? Okay, we will move on to the council. I know we've been at it a while, so I just remind folks why I'm guiding the dialogue on this particular item is that the mayor passed the gavel in order to speak on the item. So that is where we're at, and as a result, I will not be addressing the item. So anyway, questions for Director Franken or anybody?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Kiley.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Kiley. Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank all the citizens that reached out to me, and I know that other councilors heard from many people. I probably had over 250 emails and 60 to 70 voice messages. Tried to keep up with them as best I could, but quite frankly, today got a little bit overwhelmed. So if you did not hear from me, I did get your emails and your messages, read and listened to every one of them. I know that this is a first reading, and basically tonight we're deciding whether to move it on to a second reading or not, so I will keep my questions pointed toward that purpose. My question is for anyone of the administration that's present regarding Section 3 businesses, and we've heard from a few people this evening that there is confusion regarding all businesses are encouraged to remain open and to the greatest extent feasible. And then it goes on encouraging the use of technology. It also states ensuring employees exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 are excluded from the workplace. So it does seem to indicate that employees of these businesses that are not on the essential list can and are encouraged to be open. And it conflicts with section number 1, which says basically shall stay at home or a place of residence if possible, except to work in a critical infrastructure sector job or to conduct essential activities, both as defined herein, and that's referencing the categories that Director Franken had addressed, as well as the advisory memorandum issued by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So would somebody please address that particular item and help clear up any confusion? Because I will admit I've had several conversations with individuals on this point, and quite frankly, I have questions about it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you,
Somebody like to
Councilor.
direct?
This is Mayor. So the way this is written and worded right now is you're correct. There's no forced or mandated business closures here. What we are asking businesses to do is still try and operate if you're a non-essential business in maybe a new way. So I've used the fitness world as an example where a lot of fitness centers are going to an online model of service delivery, where they're open, they're still providing value to their members, they're doing it in a electronic way during this time. I realize that you can't cut hair electronically through the internet. I realize that wouldn't work for any business, but there's probably some options with like a greenhouse on a way to shift the business model to some delivery model, I guess, picking out inventory online and then delivering those products. So that's kind of the point of the ordinance, is to say if businesses can stay open and adapt and innovate, we'd love them to be able to do that.
Could you then explain how is this ordinance different from what we currently have in place?
Well, we don't have an ordinance right now in place that mandates essential and non-essential businesses, and also that has any legal authority for, hold on, I'm getting, my counselors are nodding their head at me. legal authority to enforce an employee who visits or works at a non-essential business going to work. So this would allow legal enforcement via Class 2. So the previous ordinance also has teeth. That's for the 10 patrons or less. This is an additional ordinance above and beyond that.
Further questions, Councilor Kiley?
Not sure if that clarified things for me. However, this is a first reading. We do have a week to dive into this proposal more, and I will continue to assess it over the week. We also, since our second reading is next Tuesday, it does give us another week to assess the COVID-19 numbers as well, too. So I will be voting to move this on to second reading because it does give us that opportunity to react to any drastic changes in the numbers over this next week. But I'll still be looking for more clarification on this item. Thank you.
Councilor Staley?
Can I just clarify one thing, Councilor Kiley, just to try and be a little clearer? Is, you know, we have what we call the Safer at Home proclamation right now, which is purely a proclamation. A stay at home is actually an ordinance. And so it's really the biggest difference on that front is we're requiring people to stay at home via this ordinance versus requesting it via the proclamation. So it's just a higher level of enforcement to what we had done previously with our proclamation.
Thank you. Well, Councilor Kiley mentioned the emails and the phone calls, and I just want to say that I'm deeply grateful for people for reaching out. Even the testimony that we've heard here tonight, because this really, as we all know, this is a community conversation. And for the record, the citizens have to realize that we did not see this until late yesterday afternoon. And I had people reaching out to me out of the gate, Teresa, how are you going to vote on this? I'm like, wait a minute. I don't even know what it is. So don't put the pressure on me to have to be saying yes or no on this thing. I'm listening. We're listening. This is a first reading. That means that it goes, we get the information and then we let it percolate. However, and so I just have to make a statement as I'm visiting with people, as I'm hearing from people. I just want to let you know that I hear the business, the financial concerns, we all do. I'm hearing you say that your personal rights are going to be violated. I get that. I'm getting the emotional toll. I talked to a senior citizen, he said to me, he said, isolation is desolation. A lot of our senior citizens, they're just in their homes, their ability to, unless they've got somebody on the phone, it's just cut off. And then the last thing, I mean, and this is the most urgent thing, is our physical toll of how health is being affected. The Smithfield thing. My good friend, her husband's a manager at Smithfield. He's now in the basement with COVID. He's isolating. You know, I mean, that I know it's affecting a lot of people. But I will, back to, we just heard about this, and I'm hearing from the community, and last week, I believe it was, these weeks are running together, but my concern, we have this 10 patron, and that is an ordinance, where 10 patrons can be in a building, can be in a business, but grocery stores are exempt from this, but 10 people. I tried to do an amendment to that to say, let's do something to help the employees, because what I'm hearing from people is that we need to take some safeguards to protect employees. And so this came out, we're going to talk about it. What happens, however, with this ordinance, and Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate everything you're doing. I wish we could have had time to have an informational on this so that we could hear all the community concerns and then see what was being put together in an ordinance, and we could have some input into it. Because right now it's a document that's put together, and I'm concerned that, and I'm planning to pass it through. So don't think that means I'm giving this a stamp of approval, but for the process, first reading, I'd say yes. However, I need to ask the city attorney this. The question will be, how much flexibility are we going to have to offer some amendments to this? Because there's some pieces here that I think are a little problematic that could possibly be worked out. But what we run into is if I bring an amendment next week that's too different, then we're going to say, well, that's changing the whole ordinance, and everything works against each other. So, Mr. Attorney, tell us if there's a chunk of this and I've got a problem with, what do I just have to vote it down at the end, or are we going to be able to bring an amendment? Because I know there's going to be discussion among the council. I know because we're just hearing about this. So, Stacy, how much flexibility are we going to have in this next week?
So, Councilor, like we discussed last week, there's a prohibition in state law on substantive amendments, so there is some flexibility there, and like you mentioned, there's a period of time here over the course of the week to discuss some of those, and so if you have any specific amendments, and we're tracking that, different potential amendments that have been mentioned, and just gives us a time to discuss with you whether, in light of the law, whether that would be considered substantive or not.
Or if it has to be noticed. I mean,
right, because substantive amendments are allowed. It would just require that we're at the first reading stage again next week. So,
and just let me just say, Mr. Mayor, okay, today at the press conference, I thought I heard you saying, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, I think we're trying to tell people to stay at home if possible. People that are over 65, the governor told you have to stay at home. I think in Sioux Falls we're saying you don't have to stay at home. I mean, there's a lot of, we don't really know. But what I heard you say today, Mr. Mayor, was that what this was going to do to change, and it might have been Mr. Joe Sneevy who asked the question, but that employees we would just be encouraging them to go home after work. You go home. So you still can come to work, but you got to go home. You don't linger.
Essential employees, you're correct.
Well, so it was essential, okay. So I'm just going to say, to me, I would just, hearing this information, I would say that I would like to just take the essential part out and say employees would go home. And I mean, and that would be a step, but. So I think the problem we're having here is the essential thing. And even, we just heard garbage handlers talked about, the essential word is what's really giving people pause.
Did you want to address that, Mr. Mayor?
I just want to, you mentioned an informational, we do have an informational scheduled on Friday with our healthcare systems that will be coming in presenting to you as the counselors, some of the data behind their modeling. So, you know, it's one thing to hear it from me. We've asked them to do that, so that's coming as well. I didn't really address this on the front end too, but I want to make sure people realize the challenge that we find ourselves in right now is that we're trying to set policy in 6 to 7 day chunks when the landscape moves in 6 to 7 hour increments right now. And so we get first readings on the book and second readings and having informationals, and we could be on a different planet come Tuesday. So I think it's good if we consider moving this to a second reading, but then second reading is not a slam dunk based on what happens between now and then, and I think that informational will help answer some clinical questions that you may have as well.
And also, let me, the rental, someone was talking about the utility issue. And Mr. Mayor, you can clarify this, but I believe in Sioux Falls, we are not shutting anyone's utilities off. That's correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, that's not happening in our town.
Councilor Erickson?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to Jill, the mayor, Chief Staff Beck, Stacy. I know you have been readily available. You have been providing updates to us every single day and then some. I feel the communication coming out of your offices have been quick and swift. I know it's a fluid situation, and so I'm very appreciative of those communications, of everything just kind of being in a whirlwind. So thank you for that. I know you've put a lot of work into what is in front of us, and again, thank you, Jill. You answered many of my questions, I have follow-ups, and we'll do that in between, and at the informational, we'll be able to discuss it. I, like Councilor Staley, will be supporting this to second reading tonight. However, I have great concerns with how this is worded. I think that the contradiction between saying everyone should stay open and be innovative and we're not closing you down is really a slippery slope. I think if you're non-essential, you'll be closed, but hey, we didn't do it. We did, because we're regulating the people that come to your work. So if you don't have customers and you don't have employees, you don't have business, period. And so I have a lot of concerns with this. I feel a lot of the things we are doing are working, but I also don't want to be 5 days behind, 6 days behind, and in a super panic mode that it might be time by next week. And so, like the mayor said, we have to have a first reading, second reading. You'll see later in our agenda, there is a companion ordinance, which has been referred to as the no lingering. We're going to simultaneously, hopefully with the support of the council, send that to next week. And so you will most likely see one of those two prevail next week, to where we will either continue the status quo of that 10 and under and maintaining what we are doing. That does have teeth in it. It is a misdemeanor and a class 2 misdemeanor and a $500 fine. I'm appreciative that the health department has done checks on businesses. Unfortunately, straight out of the gate, there was a lot of tattling over a weekend, and the health department did follow up on it. They followed up, and people were implementing a card system to ensure they only had under 10 people, a wooden token that people got when they went into their business to ensure they didn't have over 10 people. Many of these people are doing it already, and so through this, you'll hear us asking a lot of questions. I encourage everyone to tune in on Friday for our informational. That's really where we'll get to ask just numerous questions and really vet what 2 o'clock, thank you, 2 o'clock here. It will be live streamed as well. And so that will be the opportunity that we can kind of dive into this more. And if we need to make amendments and delay it, we still have the other one to fall back on. Unfortunately, every 2 weeks, this is where we're happening because it's such a fluid situation. It's super frustrating for all of us that we can't be as responsive as we'd like to be, and balancing all of your liberties and all of the economic impact and the health and everything of our community. Please know that every single person, whether they have been in support or not in support of these measures, take this serious. It's very, very hard. And as we ran for office, you've entrusted us with making those decisions. And so thank you for everyone reaching out. Again, whether somebody supports it or doesn't support it, please know that they are looking at the best interest that they feel is the right way. And so, sorry for the lengthy conversation, but obviously I'll be supporting it to the second reading, but just want to communicate some of the struggles and challenges that we see in this.
Councilor Neitzer.
Yeah, I will hesitantly support it to a second reading because of the process, but I will tell you I have a lot of concerns about this on multiple levels right now. One of the biggest issues that I ask myself is, I'm being asked to basically make a breathtaking, in my opinion, deprivation of your liberties. And I have to ask myself, do the ends justify the means, and how far am I willing to go? I think that's a really serious question. We've done things in this country where we've taken away liberties and we've looked back and we've said that was a grave mistake. And so I'm thinking about that. When I heard Kadir Ware's testimony, I wanted to get up and give him a round of applause. It was amazing, his testimony, and that's why I violated social distancing slightly to run out the door to tell him that. It was amazing to hear that. The decision I'm going to make is going to be about not overreacting, reacting calmly, not based on fear, based on fact. One of the questions, well, there's multiple questions I have. Councilor Erickson stole my thunder a little bit. I have this question and answer sheet, and it says multiple times, the city does not have the authority to close businesses. It says it over and over in this question and answer sheet. And to me, it's literally semantics. I mean, you're saying it's a crime for customers to go to your business. It's a crime for your employees to go to your businesses, but we're not closing you. I mean, No, I mean, there's some things that cannot be done. I mean, so we have to go in with eyes wide open, and we have to be willing to say, we believe this is so bad, we're going to put thousands of people out of work, and we are going to put businesses under, because it's going to happen. I'm already getting the calls. It's happening. So, and we have to own that if we're going to go down this path. And then as I read this thing, which I have some questions about, one of the questions I have is there an exception for religious practices, or, you know, if somebody wants to go to their church and talk to their pastor, can they do that? And if so, where does it say that?
Well, the essential services component to that is listed in the CISA, and then they also carved out certain exceptions. One of the things that's being tracked right now are potential amendments. And the other thing that you could discuss with the mayor is the enforcement component of that in the event that that would be prohibited. But I don't think there's any intent on the mayor's part to enforce any component related to religious things like what you mentioned.
I have a serious problem with enacting something where we're going to tell people things are illegal, but then we're not going to enforce it. I don't necessarily see how, and when I read the CISA, unless I'm reading it wrong, that has to do with the employees. So I think the pastor maybe could go to the church, but it would be illegal for me to go to the church to get some counseling from my pastor. Am I reading that wrong?
Oh, right. You can ask that question of the mayor, but like I mentioned, I don't think.
Well, you're our city attorney, so.
Right. Well, it doesn't say that in there. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay, so we're potentially violating religious liberty. So there's that potentially. I haven't heard a good answer to that. If somebody passes away, can I go to a funeral home and visit them? Is that in here?
I can't answer that right now. I can get you an answer on that.
Okay, well, that would be an important thing to know about. I will tell you, the fact that we are literally having people begging and giving us their justification of why they believe that they're essential versus non-essential, I'm not going to make the choice. There's no way. Everybody, it's your livelihood, it's your careers, it's your employees. You're all essential. All of this is completely arbitrary. All of it. And I'm not picking on any of your justifications, but there is no standard here. There's no objective standard to decide what is essential and what is non-essential. We're going to pick winners and losers. We're going to decide who's going to go under. We're going to decide who lives, who dies, figuratively. So this is a tough one. You've got to show me some data that really, really shows that we're going to be overrun. And I look at these charts, and I'm still struggling because I see these per capita numbers, and I ask myself, what does that mean? What does the per capita numbers mean? All of us are going to have high numbers per capita at some point. Every city is going to increase. We don't have a vaccine. But what about the hospitalization rate? So I just have all of these questions, and again, I'm just going to continue to struggle and try. And the thing I'm going to be convicted and ask myself is, am I willing to, in my belief, violate your civil liberties because I think this is so urgent? Because I think we're going to do that. That's just where I'm at.
Before we go any further, can we get a motion?
I'll move to set the second reading for next Tuesday.
Second.
Okay.
Second, Kylie.
Got a motion by Erickson, seconded by
Chairman.
Staley. And we will move on. Further discussion. Councilor Brecky.
Thank you, Chairman Felber. I have an amendment that I have submitted to all of you earlier today, and at this time I would like to publish this amendment for purposes of making it part of this record so that it can be noticed for discussion next week. And so I have the amendment. Tom Greco has it. If he could put that up on the screen at this time, I'd like to go through it with you and just, again, make it part of this record, have it published, as part, published alongside the ordinance so that it can be discussed next week. I don't know whether it's substantive or not because I don't know. This is something new that's being imposed upon the council, so I'm just trying to respond to it. And so in case that it is substantive, then I would want this to happen so that it could be adopted next week if the council so decides. What you see before you is an amendment that I will be proposing next week as an official amendment, and so it might have a few changes, but I think that it's pretty much established, to be introduced the way I want it. And what I'm trying to do with this amendment is to introduce or invoke the home rule powers, into this ordinance procedure. And the first part of it is, actually, a recitation, of, Article 9, Section 2 of the Constitution. It says, whereas, pursuant to the authority granted to the City of Sioux Falls, a municipality chartered under Article 9, Section 2 of the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, with all the powers set forth therein, do hereby invoke those powers as follows. And I would just remind the council that the City of Sioux Falls and the Home Rule Charter provision of the State of South Dakota is one of the most liberal provisions in the country. So when we as a council invoke these powers, we will be arming the mayor with some very strong powers to deal with this crisis in an innovative and creative way as things get more serious and the decisions need to be made more quickly and we need to be more nimble. There's a wide variety of opportunities for the mayor when we start invoking these powers in the ordinances that we pass. As again, just acknowledging that we have one of the most liberal provisions in the country. The second paragraph, whereas the purpose of home rule constitutional provisions is to eliminate to some extent the authority of the legislature over the municipality and to bestow on the municipalities coming thereunder full power of local self-government as to all subjects which are strictly of municipal concern and not in conflict with the Constitution or general laws applied thereto. Depending upon applicable constitutional provisions, a charter adopted thereunder may become the organic law of the municipality and supersedes all general state laws in conflict with it relating to purely municipal affairs. This is a recitation from McQuillan of municipal, it is a municipal treatise. It's a legal treatise that is a municipal, it's an explanation of municipal corporations, municipal law. And then whereas the City of Sioux Falls has adopted such a constitutional charter as referred to above, which is the organic law for the City of Sioux Falls, and pursuant to Sioux Falls City Charter, Article 1, Powers of the City, Section 101, the city shall have all the powers possible for a city to have under the Constitution and laws of this state as fully and completely as though they were specifically enumerated in this charter. That is a direct quote from our Sioux Falls Charter. Whereas pursuant to Section 904 of Sioux Falls City Charter and as provided by the state constitution, laws that are inconsistent or interfere with the effective operation of this charter are superseded. That's a paraphrase, from a section that there's other stuff in there, but that's, kind of how the section reads when you paraphrase it. And then whereas implementation of the ordinance will be for a limited duration necessary to meet the public health emergency. So what this does is it's going to bolster the powers that we are executing. So in addition to referring to South Dakota state law and the powers that the city is given there, we are also invoking, our charter powers as well, as well as we go through this process and implement this, if we so choose to implement it. So that is something that we can have full discussion. I got it done as quickly as I could and got it to you as quickly as I could. We have a full week now to discuss it. If any of you want to discuss it with me this week, I'd be glad to do it and help you understand why I think it's important that we give the mayor these powers and we start putting these powers in anything that we adopt during this crisis. We refer to them because it does broaden the scope of our authority to adopt these things. And because they are, as Councilmember Neitzer said, very serious times with very serious consequences and obligations that, we may incur as we move forward with this and other ordinances that we may have to adopt. So I guess if there's any questions at this time, again, the purpose at this time is to just notice it, make it part of the record so that we can have a full and fluid discussion with it next week.
Did you have a question for Councilor Brecky? Councilor Staley?
Councilor Brecky, this is the first time I'm seeing this, but this almost seems like it would be something, a standalone ordinance. I mean, are you?
It's not an ordinance.
Well, it's an amendment to this.
It's not an ordinance. It's, yeah, and
Well, you're putting it into an ordinance.
It's really,
but
I'm invoking these powers in support of this ordinance. It's in the whereases, and it would be placed right above with the invocation of the state authority.
But it sounds to me
It's just
like
an additional authority.
it sounds to me like there may be some discussion that perhaps we're going to take the power away from the ordinance, and what you're doing is putting more power into the ordinance.
I'm putting more power in support of the ordinance. If we do adopt the ordinance, I think it's just getting critical that we start implementing and invoking our home rule powers as we do some of these unprecedented maneuvers as we work through this crisis. And so you'll probably see me add in these provisions to pretty much anything that we're adopting on a go-forward basis.
Any other comments, questions, councilors?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Starr?
Yep, absolutely. I guess my first question is then maybe a ruling from the chair. Is this sufficient notice to take this amendment up next week?
Mr. Chair, I could address that one actually. And I think Councilor Brecky, you may want to clarify sort of your earlier comments. You're not actually bringing this as an amendment tonight. Correct. This is one that you're simply stated for consideration next week.
Well, I guess maybe I'd ask the question back at you. I'm just trying to make sure that it can be discussed and adopted next week if the council so chooses. So am I doing what I need to do?
Well, pursuant to state law, the amendment would be brought next week. So there really isn't consideration of it this week. I understand you wanted to provide notice of that to the councilors, but at this point there really isn't any action on any amendments because the only real agenda item in front of the council right now was whether to pass this to second reading. So there wouldn't be any amendments on the merits. To that extent, you've
right. I'm not. That's correct. I'm not asking for an amendment on the merits. What I am doing, however, is asking that it be made part of the record so the public, as well as the council, has noticed that this is going to be discussed for possible adoption next week.
And I think to that end, you did provide that notice to Councilor Starr's question. There really isn't a motion or an action being brought on this amendment. That would all occur next week.
Okay.
But just for clarification, though, I thought we were going to talk on Friday, and then if we had some, that we were supposed to talk about what our amendments were going to be ahead of time.
Well, I mean, you can consider what amendments to bring. You would bring them next week, Tuesday. Friday.
I thought we talked about we just talked earlier about if I want to mess around with part of this ordinance and take some of it out, Councilor Brecky's putting more stuff in, I might want to take something out. And at what point does this thing turn into something totally different?
Right, that's where we would have to look at the substance of each proposed amendment. The meeting on Fridays actually would be brought pursuant to City Ordinance 30.002, which would just be a special meeting. So no action would be taken at that meeting. That would be informational in the sense that it would provide the council an opportunity to learn more about the data. But the amendments themselves are brought on second reading pursuant to state law. So that's when you'd be able to bring them.
And one more thing, just for clarification, because after the mayor said we're having this informational on Friday, and I'm thinking that was in response to my desire to have a little more brainstorming about what's within this ordinance here. Remember I said it'd be nice if we would have had an informational on this, and then mayor said, well, we are having one on Friday. So I was thinking, okay, that means we're going to be able to talk about these different parts. We're hearing from the community. We're kind of talking about maybe tweaking some of this. So did I hear that?
Yeah, I should probably clarify that information will be more of a data-driven clinical presentation on the modeling behind why we're bringing this forward. So less about the substance of this ordinance and more about healthcare conversations, if that makes sense, with Aaron Sanford.
So if I may say, I think it might be I'm just going to throw this out, council, that it might be to our benefit in the communities if we had our own special informational, a working session perhaps, to talk about this. Well, I know it's, I mean, I don't know how much, if we just scheduled that informational today out for Friday, but I think the public would appreciate it if we got together. We're hearing from them. I mean, as Councilor Kiley said, 200 and some emails. Why not get together before next week and talk about it? Just throwing it out.
Any other counselors have comments, questions? Counselor Neitzer?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I mention a couple other things before we finish, because I want to make sure it's not, certain things aren't left out there. The first thing is, if this goes forward, I think there's going to be, well, I know there's going to be a lot of confusion about who is essential and not essential if that language stays, and there's going to have to be guidance, because every business is going to be asking, there's all these edge cases, we're already being asked about it. And so there would have to be some guidance there, and we would have to give very clear direction. You can't say something is illegal and then not be willing to give guidance as to what it is. I want to make clear to citizens, this is not, the stay-at-home really is kind of a misnomer, because there's so many exceptions in this. And I'm seeing a lot already of, there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, tattling going on, and people who, because they perceive that everybody's supposed to, quote unquote, if we pass this, it'll be perceived that people are supposed to stay at home. And I can already foresee there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, I saw this person driving here, and this person went to this, and they did this. And so don't be under the illusion that we're all going to go in and stay for 3 weeks and then come out. And even if we were, we would just delay things. I think if some people have told me, if you could tell me if we did this for 3 weeks, if we all just sheltered and this just was done, maybe I'm willing to take the hit. But if you're telling me it's going to go on and on and on, then that's really a problem. Have to ask ourselves, is the incremental benefit worth it versus a cost versus what we're doing now? It's very wishy-washy. I think of what we're doing, what we'd be doing more in addition. I also struggle with potentially we're going to be punishing all of these businesses that we told to innovate, and they did it. They figured out a way to run responsibly, and then we're just going to say, well, we're just going to shut you down anyway because of a couple of bad actors. I'm not sure whether voting is considered a essential service or essential thing to do. So I don't know that I see that language. And so I could see all kinds of things. Maybe in closing, there needs to be a compelling governmental interest when you impose things like this, when you deprive people of their rights, and it has to be the least restrictive means to further that goal. And so that would be the question. Is there something least restrictive than telling 180,000 people that they have to stay in their homes when there's no proof that they necessarily have an infection or are breaking any rules or doing anything wrong? Finally, the other thing I want to clear up for people is I am getting a lot of feedback of how could you're choosing the economy over health, and I would reject that out of hand. This is not a binary choice. The economic issue, the economy does not exist in a vacuum. Behind the economy are people with jobs, businesses, hopes, dreams. They've worked their whole life for this. They have employees. I'm getting calls from all kinds of people. And you know who this is hitting the hardest? The people on the lowest tiers. Some of the higher end people, I'm a software engineer, I work from home. Now I'm going to be probably looking at furloughs or getting a pay cut in the next week or two, maybe even a layoff, and it may happen. But the people that are getting hammered, service sector workers, hospitality, these people are living paycheck to paycheck. They're going to get creamed by this. Not everybody can just work from home. Some of us maybe have that luxury, but we don't. And so we have to think about them. The mental health, the anxiety, the suicide, the physical ailments from the stress, all of those things that happen. There's no free lunch either way on this. And I do want to say, the health director, the city staff, the EOC, the mayor, they're trying their hardest. They're making impossible decisions like we are. So this is not meant to be perceived as an attack on anybody. These are impossible decisions, but I just want to make everybody aware that this is not an easy, we do this and there's no cost to it versus this other one. We're being pulled in all these different directions, and we have to think really hard about it. Thank you for entertaining that input.
Any of the counselors on the phone have anything? One more time around here.
Yes, Mr.
Counselor Sale.
Mr. Chair, this is Counselor Sale.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick observation to echo some of the things that have been previously said. It's probably one of the hardest decisions we're going to have to make in our time on the council. And I reject the fact that it is one versus the other, because I think this is a no-win situation for all of us to be put in. The community and the council, the mayor, the governor, on down. As the mayor has previously stated, we're not the enemy, whether you're on the one side or the other. The enemy is the COVID. The enemy is the coronavirus. We're trying to do our best to do that. I do have one question for the city attorney. Will there be a central number where residents and businesses of the community can contact you to get clarification on whether or not they are an essential business? Thank you.
Chairman Selberg?
Hold on. Our city attorney's answering a question. Councilor Brecky, then we'll go to you.
I can probably answer that, Councilor Sale. I'm looking at my chief of staff right now because we're working on that and standing up a dedicated line and a dedicated email address to answer all the questions that we know will come from this, using some of our employees who are affected by this. For instance, our libraries aren't open, and we got a lot of library staff who will likely be helping us with some of this work. So we'll be setting that up, Councilor. I just want to make sure, though, that it seems there's a little bit of confusion on this. I just want to make sure it's very clear that the CISA federal guidelines list all those, what they call essential infrastructure jobs. So there's pages and pages that list all the different classifications and all the different sectors that are considered essential, not by the city of Sioux Falls, but by the infrastructure department and at the federal level. So that's really how we're kind of taking our cues to define what are considered essential.
Councilor Brecky?
Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to speak a little more as to where I'm at with all of this. In addition to the amendment, I just want to share with the council. I'm hearkening back. There was a very critical for me a meeting in all of this when we had a chance to really talk openly with the doctors, and I made some decisions right at that point. And I'm kind of hearkening to those discussions. And one of the doctors said, and I can't give credit to which one, but he said, when responding to a pandemic, you do too much at the beginning and you'll be an alarmist. You'll be called an alarmist. But afterwards, you will be told you didn't do enough. And he said, at some point in all of this, you council members are going to have to make, are going to have to figure out where you stand on that. And that stuck with me, and it's resonating with me now. We are at that juncture where that's where we're going to have to make that decision. Also, in that same meeting, they said, when you're dealing with a pandemic, the CDC guidelines would say you worry about saving lives first, then you worry about slowing the disease, and then you worry about the economy. Now, we're trying to do all those things at once, but I think there is kind of a hierarchy in there. The economy it's tanked, and it's tanked worldwide, and we got a big job of doing what to do. But then eventually, we're going to have to deal with the economy, and that's an even bigger job after it's all said and done. But that's where I'm thinking. I'm thinking about that. I'm trying to focus on what we need to do, in that order. But all of them are important, and certainly I'm relying heavily, I'm trying to rely heavily on science and medicine, in making my decision. But I appreciate all the comments that have been discussed tonight and all of the testimony. And I also wanted to ditto what Councilmember Kiley said. I am not answering all the emails and voicemails, but I am making an effort to listen to every single one and read every single word of every single one. I'm behind, but I intend to keep reading them and because I'm very interested in what people have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm trying to rephrase my questions on the fly here because I like change, but this is the first time that we're getting offered an informational after first reading. Usually first reading's about making that decision whether or not this ordinance is ready to move forward or not. So we're kind of in that point. I mean, I planned on coming tonight to vote to move this to second reading to continue the discussion. I think the mayor is entitled to spend the next week bringing the community and us along, and I think he's going to do a great job of that. And I think the meeting on Friday is going to give us that opportunity at 2 o'clock. But now, as I'm hearing the discussion, we're probably not asking the questions other than it's of the healthcare providers and the modeling and things that we're going to do on Friday. So we're missing out on this first reading where we would normally ask a lot of questions than we normally would. I know Councilor Neitzert has probably a longer list than he's shared with us tonight that he would have liked to have brought up. But I guess the couple of things that I do want to cover yet tonight, I want to know where the health club bullet point disappeared to. It was in my packet of information that I got yesterday, and when did it get pulled out of the ordinance?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. That was, quite honestly, it was inadvertently included from another ordinance that we were working off. So that the Board of Health amended that out at their board meeting today. And so what got posted online was an incorrect version. And so because it was posted, we had to run with it, and they amended that out. So
then just to follow up, if I can, Mayor, then I have a problem with what we noticed the public for a decision that was made by the Board of Health that hadn't happened yet. We put in the notice to the public that they had unanimously approved this and as a resolution, and they hadn't met since April 8th. I mean, how do we explain that to the public? I mean, I know we're doing things on the fly and trying to do the best we can, but that's basic to me.
yeah, I can't speak to that because I don't know. I'm not spun up on that situation, so I apologize. I can't speak to that.
It's a timing thing.
I understand, though. I think one of our public inputters brought that up. So,
well, and I just wanted to make it clear. I guess I'm trying to figure out what's in order to ask questions tonight and I should wait and try to do that. And I've gotten to the point where I can get the answers that I need by contacting different parts of the city, all the way down from the mayor's office down as part of the administration. But if I do that, then the public doesn't get the answers to those questions. And that's why I prefer anymore to ask the questions in this format. And I think that time has passed tonight. One of the things that I do want to hear about on second reading, originally we talked about peer cities, and we didn't have, I don't believe Rapid City was included on that list of peer cities, or it came off the list of peer cities. We talked a lot about, at one of our last meetings, the city in Florida, and I don't remember which city it was in Florida that we used. Tallahassee. So if we can get those couple added back, or if there was something that pulled them from that list of peer cities, why that wouldn't do that. I am concerned. I hope to hear from Chief Burns about call volume and where we're at and what we're seeing as the city continues. I do echo some of those concerns, and some of the officers that I've talked to are seeing a lot more domestic disturbances as people aren't going to work. And how are we handling that? And do we have the staff of people to handle those kind of things? And like I said, I guess I'll save the rest for between now and next week and trying to throw some of these out at second reading. Thanks.
Mr. City Attorney, do you have something?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple points of clarification on a couple things. One regarding the posted notice that you mentioned for that, as the mayor mentioned, that was inadvertently included, but then it was revised and posted prior to 24 hours for this meeting. So it went in with the Board of Health and was amended, but it was posted, withdrawn, and the publication of the current ordinance was prior to 24 hours. So that still met that.
But it didn't say amended, did it?
No, because you don't need to, because it wasn't posted. I mean, it was still posted. A lot of people
saw it. It was online. That's where I saw it. I saw it after 5 o'clock, or it was still online after 6 o'clock when I pulled it up originally. So if we're going to pull stuff or there was an error, there should at least be a note that says it was amended.
Well, an amendment would come at second reading. It was posted
Not an
prior to
amendment,
24 hours.
I don't care what you call it then. I mean, there should have been some kind of notice that it was there and it's not there anymore, because that's what turns the conspiracy people loose.
Wow.
You know, and it was after the 24-hour notice when it was pulled and updated, because it was still online. I know when I looked at it at around 6 o'clock that it was still included Well, one, it was included in one place and it wasn't included in the other, but it was both on SIRE under where the ordinance was.
It was posted prior to the 7 PM meeting, but.
I'll pull it up from my computer. I don't want to argue with you about it, but when I pulled it up, it was 6 or 7 o'clock, and there should have been a note at least that there was a mistake, that there was an error, and here's the updated version, or this is version 2 that made it by that point. Because people looked at it in the afternoon, made decisions about whether they would come tonight or not based on that. And if there's some way to at least have a note so that it's included so we know it's there, or that it changed.
All right.
Because I took calls from people who were saying, well, why is it here and why isn't it here? And both versions were up, you know, at that point, so.
Okay. On the second point, you had talked about the informational meeting or the meeting on Friday. Like I mentioned, the mayor called that as a special meeting. So I think when the term informational has been used there, that would be lowercase I as opposed to an informational that occurs on Tuesdays. So it's again, 30.002 for those that are following, which is a special meeting, which can be called by the mayor or 6 councilors. And so that's what's being provided on Friday.
Well, and my question then is, what questions are we going to be allowed to ask? Is it strictly about modeling and data, or are we going to be able to ask the same questions we would ask on first or second reading? Or what will the administration be prepared to answer for questions? Do we need to stick to that is noticed?
That'll be provided in the notice, the content of what the special meeting entails. So
right now we don't know what we can ask and what we can't ask on Friday.
Well, again, it's being discussed, and the terms of what's in the special meeting will be listed on the notice, and so that will help guide.
Yeah.
All right, we ready to call for a vote? Let's go.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for the good discussion on that. I really appreciate you being here tonight. You can leave if you want. You're not rude if that's all you came here for. We got a couple more items that we'll speak to. Next one is item 23.
Item 23, this is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, extending the effective date of ordinance number 2920, adopting the Sioux Falls Board of Health second amended and restated regulations pertaining to the novel coronavirus COVID-19. The recommendation is to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020.
Good evening, Jill Franken again. I almost feel like I need to say good night. This is a first reading of ordinance that's already in place that you've already extended one time that we are asking for another extension. This is our ordinance that you've maybe heard out in the public as being called our no lingering ordinance, but it is, we are recommending that we again extend this ordinance to May 15th. And we thought it would be necessary to not have this go just the additional 2 weeks, but rather have it go until May 15th so that we can have some overlap with the prior ordinance should that one be adopted. So for your consideration.
Thanks, Jill. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item tonight? Doesn't look like it. I don't know if you guys are speaking or just leaving. We'll let you, all right. You can speak to this one though if you want. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, then we'll look for well, let's first ask if there's any questions for Jill. Yes, Councilor Starr, go ahead.
Thank you. Director Franken, if I could, that's okay, we'll get you out of here quick. It's been long enough days. Talk to me a little bit about how this has worked, or where, by extending it, I think you think that it's working, so we want to continue to do that, but give me a little bit of how you think the ordinance is working, the one that's in place, and as part of extending that, or give us, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so far we feel like we've had good compliance. We've been doing a number of unannounced inspections. Our health department inspectors have been going out quite regularly to make sure that, you know, businesses are in compliance with this ordinance. And the general public, I think, is in compliance with it pretty well as well for what this ordinance provides and what are the parameters within this ordinance.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Jill? Anyone on the phone have any questions for Jill? All right, look for a motion to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, April 21 on this.
So moved, Erickson.
Second, Selbert.
All right, motion by Erickson to that extent, seconded by Selberg. Any further discussion, council? Okay, we'll take a vote on this, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley? Yes. Brecky? Brecky? Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
She's back.
And Councilor Kylie, did you say yes?
Brecky, yes.
Kylie?
Kylie was a yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
That passes 8 or 9.
Did you get
10 to
Brecky
0,
yes?
something like that. Yeah. Passes unanimously. We got it, Janet.
Okay.
All right. Next item, please. Item 24.
Item 24, a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota temporarily reducing transit services due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Eckhoff, Planning and Development Services, Mayor. It's interesting what a difference a week makes. We started this last week. We've seen sharp declines in ridership because of the COVID, 65% on fixed route, 85% on paratransit. In addition, over a third of the drivers for SAM are in that vulnerable population. And so we started making plans to reduce service. The original intent was to stop service at 6:45, 2 hours early, and to increase the pickup times from 30 minutes, which is the case on most of the routes, to an hour. And then we could sustain the drivers at that time. Well, fast forward, as we waited for the council meeting, ridership continues to drop. And then, as you probably heard today in the news, one of the drivers was tested positive yesterday for COVID and did drive a couple routes last weekend on para. So with that, we started the wheels in motion Monday and kind of scrambled to decide probably the best route now to sustain services is to temporarily suspend 6 of the routes that are the least productive, and then continue to cut the service on some of the others and fill in with para. Sam Chabelcock is here, and he can give you the details on that and questions you have. But because of that change and that pivot, we do have an amendment that we're asking for tonight that addresses those things. It also encompasses the Board of Health meeting that was held today. And if you have technical questions, please ask Sam.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. What we'll first do is see if there's any public input on this one tonight. Good evening.
Steven Ciano, I ride the buses, mostly fixed route. I do have trouble getting around. I think you've noticed I have a couple spinal injuries and some breathing problems and some other physical as well as some mental issues. And I'm a regular rider, and it's already been inadequate. And I tried for paratransit and was refused and referred back to the City Human Relations, who had done nothing for me in the past. So why would I appeal to them when they've shown their colors, I suppose? But I can understand this, and I just may have to find a way around it. It does seem to make sense, but some of us are going to be harmed by it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? All right, counselors, do you have questions on this for Jeff or for Sam?
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Counselor Starr.
I'll go with Sam rather than Jeff by the time we're done. So, again, tonight we've spent a lot of time talking about the most vulnerable in our community, and our transit system does that. And as we move forward with this, I know you said the least amount of ridership is where we're cutting back. So I'm trying to make sure that we're getting people to those essential jobs, whether it's the hospitals, whether, in some of those things. So are we doing everything we can, or is there something that we need to do, some special routes to get people to those essential services that we're going to need in the next month?
So if you look at the amended resolution, and I'll refer to that, it's one of the last, it's that last bullet item in the resolution. we accommodate exactly what you're talking about, Councilor Starr, and that's any rider with essential trip that is temporarily not served by a fixed route. So any of these routes that are not served, which are going to be routes 1, 2, 5, 9, 11, and 19, they may contact Sioux Metro and apply for an essential trip. And we provide those services either with a fixed route bus or a paratransit bus, depending on the amount of ridership of the driver providing it. So we feel that because the number of rides provided on those routes are so low, we can provide it in that way.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. How are we, I mean, I think there was a news release that went out already, or, I mean, how we communicate to make sure those riders get that information. Can we, now I remember where I was headed with this. All of a sudden, it's what happens when you get old at this time of night. I believe it was Mrs. Brechtelsbauer that was pointing it out, that we could contact people who have 30-day passes. I don't remember if you were copied on that email or not, you know, out of the 200 and some.
Melanie Bliss.
Absolutely. That we could contact some of the people that we have contact information for them too as well, to make sure that they're taken care of and going in the right direction. Or she had made some suggestions with names I hadn't heard before, and I,
right, and we'll certainly take anybody's comments into consideration, ways that we can get this information out. Obviously, this is a very unusual circumstance, and it's in an emergency, and so we're going to work really hard tomorrow to get that information out to the public, so they know what's going on. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Other questions for Sam? Councilor Neitzert.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll hit Councilor Neitzert, and then you next, Councilor Kiley.
When it said, you talk about low ridership, just, can you give us sort of a ballpark for the ones that are being suspended, 1, 2, 5, 9, 11, and 19? I'm not asking for exact numbers, but what does low ridership mean?
So on a day basis, those riders are probably all under about 70 riders a day. To give you an idea, overall, we're down from 2,700 a day, and now just Monday, I think we're at 800 for the entire system. So that's why Jeff had said, you know, we were down 65%, we're now down 71%. And we're expecting that to go lower now that there's knowledge of you know, this hitting the system. We had 2 other workers that went home sick today. Now, we don't know what happened, but there's...
Thank you. And then in terms of the other, when you talk about if they have an essential trip, would you be mirroring and looking over at this other ordinance that defines essential jobs and things?
We want to be consistent, absolutely. So whatever is the current policy that you have provided, we would make sure we want to be consistent with that.
Would there be things besides the jobs in terms of maybe a doctor's appointment, or have you thought about that?
So again, in that section, it specifically lists essential trips being work trips, medical appointments, pharmacy, grocery store, and critical jobs.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. And Sam, thank you for the inclusion of the last bullet point pertaining to any rider with an essential trip that is temporarily not served by the fixed route. And this is dealing with fixed routes that maybe are temporarily eliminated. How soon in advance do they need to contact Sioux Area Metro to arrange their ride? I know with paratransit as it exists today, they need to have a 24-hour in advance notice. What was discussed with this last bullet point?
So it would be the same. And in fact, we'll be using the same paratransit scheduling software, Route Match, to provide the scheduling for these essential trips too. So it's going to be done right out of the paratransit office.
And how will that information be communicated to the fixed route since they're not used to paratransit rules?
Well, really, again, they're going to dispatch these rides from the paratransit office. So either a paratransit bus will be sent out with a route of who to pick up and who to drop off, Or in some cases, if you have enough rides, it might be a fixed route bus, but, so it'll be dispatched just like a paratransit.
Well, what I was trying to convey is individuals that are used to riding the fixed route are not used to a 24-hour notice for a ride. How's that going to be communicated? How are we going to educate them?
Well, it's going to have to be done as part of their call-in, part of their reservation of appointment. So when they're discussing, hey, I need a ride, we'll have to say, okay, it's going to have to be 24 hours ahead of time, and it'll have to be for one of these essential trips. This is when your scheduled ride can be done, and this is when I'm going to pick up and drop off, and they can either accept or deny the trip.
I know it'll be difficult to do it, but as much as possible, let's try to do it in such a way where that person that has an appointment on that day doesn't miss his doctor's appointment because he didn't call 24 hours in advance. Thank you.
Other questions for Sam? About Sam? I just always like saying that. All right, let's get a motion approved, and then Councilor Shelby has an amendment to make. So can we get a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve. Neitzer.
Okay, motion by Neitzer, seconded by Erickson.
Second, Kylie.
You missed that one, Rick. So that's seconded by Erickson.
Darn delay in the phone.
Yeah. Councilor Selberg, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce an amendment that reads as follows. Whereas on April 15th, 2020, the Sioux Falls Board of Health issued an order to suspend and reduce certain fixed route transit services to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Section 1, that effective immediately upon passage and publication of this resolution and continuing until 11:59 p.m. on May 8th, 2020, the following changes shall be in effect for Sioux area Metro transit services in order to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Routes 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10 shall run hourly service each day, beginning at 5:45 a.m. on weekdays and beginning at 7:45 a.m. on Saturdays. Routes 1, 2, 5, 9, 11, and 19 shall suspend services through May 8th, 2020. A new time schedule shall be made available at www.siouxfalls.org/SAM. The last route departure time for all route services shall be at 6:45 p.m., no evening service. Paratransit shall maintain current service area boundaries but run reduced service hours from 5:15 a.m. to 6:45 p.m., no evening service. Any rider with an essential trip that is temporarily not served by a fixed route may contact Sioux Falls Area Metro at 367-7151 to apply for limited essential trip services. Essential trips will include service to medical appointments, pharmacies, grocery stores, and critical jobs. Section 2, immediate effect. The resolution is hereby declared necessary for the immediate preservation of the public health and shall become effective immediately upon its passage in public pursuant to SDCL 9-19-13.
Second.
All right, a motion to amend from Councilor Selberg. Did Councilor Erickson, you seconded that? Okay. Discussion on that, Councilor Neitzer.
Can you go back to the first page of the, okay. Just the part that was missed was in the last whereas, suspend and then the word and. But just so we're clear that it's there, not only temporary reducing, but suspending. The question I have is, does a resolution fall into the substantial change rules, and do we have to talk about deferral or not?
No. The whereas components and the other parts of it, no, they're not substantive.
Okay. Other questions, discussion on the amendment?
Yeah,
Councilor
just a question for the city attorney. A question for the city attorney. So resolutions don't apply?
Changed them on a resolution.
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry, what?
Things?
No, Charlotte, can you?
So this substantive rule doesn't apply to resolutions?
I'm going to have our Assistant City Attorney, Charlotte Swenis. She's been working on this piece, if she can address that.
Yeah, just for the future, can I have a copy of the state law you're referring to?
Sure.
Do you have it? What's the citation for it?
Yeah, the substantial amendment statute applies to ordinances. It does not apply to resolutions. I can get you the site.
Thank you.
This is Charlotte, Assistant City Attorney. I was looking for the reference in the city ordinances, but I do believe it applies to second reading of ordinances and not resolutions.
And we can get the site. Thank you, Charlotte.
Councilor Erickson.
I'll just add that that's good to know, because we have had to delay when we've done our legislative resolutions in the past. When this body passes it and then we send it to the municipal league, the county, and the legislators. I think it was this year and last year that we did have to delay it both times, and those are resolutions. So I would really, really encourage some guidance and direction from the attorney's office to all council, just so we're aware of what we can and can't do, and if it delays. I mean, it really plans your strategy as far as tonight, Councilor Brecky put something forward in hopes that that was enough notice so she can bring it next week, and hopefully if that's sufficient or not. But I mean, it really plans your, I guess, strategy of bringing an amendment or not, and then what if it's an emergency and we need to pass it immediately, kind of like this. I mean, this needs to go right now. So I think we really need some guidance on that.
Counselor, if I may, we are always available. If somebody's interested in bringing an amendment, they have ample time to contact our office anytime during the week if they have those questions, and we'd certainly be happy to assist.
But my point is that we need clear guidance moving forward on this for all of us, whether that's and I'll work with you offline to make sure we get this, because things are crazy, but it does make a big difference as far as what is brought and not brought for items. Because I don't want to slow anything up too when things are time sensitive, because oftentimes we're waiting on bids, we're waiting on certain things, but there are things that confidentially, I will work with you, but maybe I don't want my amendment public yet. And we all do that from time to time, and then sometimes we post it like Janet did today, so Councilor Brecky. So we'll work together offline and see what we can come up with, though. So thank you.
All right, so we have
Chairman? Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor Starr.
Thank you. I guess the point that we're trying to make, and I don't put words in anybody else's mouth, but my own, but there are times on second reading where we're discussing an issue and we take public input and we put an amendment together on the fly. We don't have time to call the attorney's office in between, but we also don't have time to put it off for a week. And we're discussing a topic, and I think we're approaching a time now where the city's attorney's office is telling us that we can't make amendments on the fly from public input on second reading without planning on adding an extra week, which really makes it a deterrent to public input. So why would I come and talk to the council and tell something if we've already made up our decision, or we don't have time to wait another week to put it off?
Well,
and I think we're giving the public plenty of notice when we're discussing an item that's been published. And I think the debate really is what's substantive and what's not. And I think that's where we're a little put off by this.
Okay, well, I can tell you that the irony of your statement is that you also want people to be able to have public input. And so, I mean, you can be disappointed in the state of what the law says and what state law says requiring that notice. But there's a due process component to this where the members of the public could be seriously concerned that somebody on second reading is substantively changing a proposed law to skirt the public input requirements. And so that's how I'd say, if you have an amendment that you're concerned about being substantive, we can happily work with you to give you that guidance. But the reality is, and what state law contemplates, is that the members of the public are entitled to 2 readings before you pass a law. And so the members of the council are certainly welcome to bring amendments, but if they're substantive enough, you know, there are those concerns that the public has a chance to have that input.
And I agree, and I agree totally.
Mayor?
If I can,
Councilor Starr, go ahead, then Councilor Brecky.
My point is that this is a new interpretation for us. This isn't the way that these amendments have been interpreted in the past. And I understand that you have a different reading and a different interpretation of different from what we've done in the past. And that's where I think we're asking for that guidance.
I'll just ask, you guys can take this offline. We'll figure out, there's obviously some audio and video not matching on this. So we can, I would encourage, you guys, Stacy, Councilor Starr, Councilor Erickson has some concerns as well. We'll get this worked out. I see your points, Councilors, so thanks for raising them. And we'll move forward.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Staley.
I do want to say that I think if we're looking at this resolution
Janet.
in front of us, it really, the public really didn't have a chance to weigh in on it. I mean, we could have had people impacted by it haven't had a chance to come forth and give us any input on it. So to that point, I agree with Councilor Erickson that I think maybe we need to get a little more definition offline, so to speak.
I skipped over Councilor Brecky. I apologize. Councilor Brecky, you can have the floor.
Well, I was just thinking that this might be one of those places where we ask for a written opinion from the city attorney's office, and he can put some guidance in writing. And again, we can talk about that some more later. But I think that again, it represents really talk about substantive. This is a substantive change to how the council functions, and I've never heard of it before. So it's all brand new to me, and I'm most anxious to see where it's coming from and what the driving force is behind it. I mean, certainly things change. There's new things happening out there, but I just want to know. So I'm anxious to have those discussions.
Councilor Brecky, if I may, if you want a written opinion, I guess what we would start with, because there has not been a change here, South Dakota Codified Law 9-19-7.1 has been in effect throughout the duration of these issues. And again, with a resolution, it doesn't require that substantive component or that second reading on a proposed ordinance. This hasn't changed, and frankly, I'm not sure where that comes from. Certainly not during my tenure here, but that any substantive change to an ordinance has required that it go to a second reading for purposes of public input. So I'm not sure where the confusion is there, but again, if you have any questions, happy to discuss those offline so that I can address any questions you have regarding substance.
The confusion coming from me right now is, I've understood, for a long time that it's never been the practice of the city to allow substitution. And that I use the word hog housing. That's a term that people commonly understand because the legislature does it. And the city of Sioux Falls has never allowed that to happen. And I think the council members are aware of that. When it so substantially changes, that it's in effect a whole new document. But this word substantive, it keeps coming up, and I've never heard that before. And so I'm not sure, I'm most anxious to look at the law that you're citing, and just the way that it's being interpreted and imposed by you is different.
Okay, I can tell you the language.
This is Councilor Sale. Are we still talking about transit?
Well, we're talking about
the law related. Are we still talking about transit?
And what I can tell you is that it says that an ordinance, if it substantially alters the substance of the ordinance, that's been in law. And I understand your question, Councilor Sale, but is related to I guess what the councilors are considering since they raised the question.
Yes, Councilor Sale, we are, and we have a motion and a second on the floor for this amendment that Councilor Selberg read into the record. Jeff, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. I forgot to mention, particularly Councilor Staley, we did have a PTAB, Public Transit Advisory Board meeting. I'd like to thank Assistant City Attorney Charla Suena. She's kept us in track with the current executive order, how this has to happen. So there was a PTAB meeting this morning, and then there was some public comment allowed for that. And we had one or two members from the public that did comment. It wasn't ideal because we had to do it over the phone, but we did have that opportunity for some public comment. And then it went through the Board of Health as well. But the PTAB was a process that's followed by executive order for changes in schedules to the transit system. Just wanted to let you know that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready to take a vote on the amendment that's on the floor? All right, Tom, let's vote on that, please.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 8-0, so we're at the main motion as amended. Other discussion on that, council? All right, seeing none, we'll move ahead with the vote on that.
Councilmember Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Before we adjourn, Pat, I know that's your jam, but I got to just say two things. One, I appreciate the discussion tonight. There's a healthy tension going on around these issues, and we are going to disagree on some of these things. And the public input was great tonight. The comments were really great, and so thank you for that. Second thing, though, is I feel that I need to also say we cannot vilify Smithfield or Smithfield employees through all this. I'm seeing Smithfield and hearing stories of Smithfield employees treated like they're lepers in our community because they work at Smithfield. And that is not an appropriate response to what's going on in our community. So there's tones of racism and other things going on as a result of what's happened at Smithfield. Smithfield is not to blame. Their employees are not to blame for what's going on in our community. Again, COVID is to blame. That's what we're working on here. So just keep that in mind and continue to lift up those employees however you can in our community.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say,
Councilor
you
Staley.
use the word leper, and actually I have used that word myself in talking about what seems to be emerging as people who have COVID in general. You know, when we're talking about tracking them, reporting them, investigating where they've been, you know, that I think there's a little bit of that sense of, the leprosy thing. So I think that's important to remember for all people who come down with that horrible illness, that it's not their fault.
Yes.
They haven't done anything wrong.
Amen. All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd move to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Motion adjourned by Starr and seconded by Erickson. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
Goodbye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.